All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics and Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics and Local. But more importantly, y'all know if it is the fourth Friday, y'all know it's time, of course, for the disciples. So coming up first tonight is, of course, going to be the disciples. Of course, Brother Ali and of course, Brother Hawk won't be with us. We're expecting Roundtree shortly. We expect that to come up first. And then at 7 o'clock, Zai, what's coming up?
Shennell McCloud, Project Ready. It's a young educator who put together her own 501c3, and I don't know Chanel personally. I'm looking forward to meeting her. The great Jonathan Alston insisted that she be on the conversation, and hoping Jonathan will get on, because Jonathan wants to continue, of course, this conversation about voter education and voter participation. And this particular arm that this young woman has created says a lot about that. Is very much about that. So we're going to have a conversation about what does it take to get more of our people to participate in local elections.
Right.
Shennell McCloud. So we're going to look forward to that. Donna, you should eat that up, right?
Civics all day. Like
Yeah,
we don't have to get ready if we stay ready. Yeah.
that's right. Yes, ma'am. At 7:45, as a young man, I'm looking forward to have Jeffrey Brooks, young councilman out of Rawway, who's him and his sister have what they call the Akbar Pray Foundation for Change. And this is a foundation that they do in support of some decarceration bills, one in particular called the Next Step Act, sponsored by none other than Cory Booker in the Senate and Bonnie Watson Coleman in the Congress. So stepped back from some of the draconian sentencing bills that were very much a part of the war on drugs. And Akbar Pray is their father, somebody who's on a long end on one of those life sentences and was convicted of a nonviolent defense. On Tuesday, there's going to be the showing of a film called 848, which is one of the numbers of the bill that's being co-sponsored by the Akbar Pray Foundation and the Newark chapter of the NAACP that looks at that bill and looks at what went wrong with those kind of sentences with mass incarceration. So we're looking forward to having that conversation. And we're hoping DJ Rhino can join us. I know he's got some things that he's struggling with. We always wrap up our night with DJ Rhino. So we hopefully he can join us and tune us in and tune us up on what's happening historically and most recently in the land of hip hop.
Technology is really good and very convenient, but when it doesn't work, it's such a challenge. So I hope we can get through some of these. I know a couple of weeks ago I had some technology problems, so overcoming these technology problems, challenges are sometimes frustrating, but it's very convenient when everything works.
That's right. Hey, Zaid, I wanted to ask you a question. You were talking about Akbar Pray. Uh, so is he able to join in on conversations outside of being incarcerated now?
I don't know the answer to that. We can ask his son that. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, he
Okay.
probably would have to do it like we remember we did before when we had somebody behind the wall. They called through the three-way, and we just got the voice and we didn't get the face. So that's probably how he would have to do it. So
And
whether
so you
they're going to have him on a call or not is the question.
said his son is going to join us.
Yes, yeah, young councilman out of Rawway. He's got his own story too that we want to lift up too, because it's when we see some young voices trying to figure out this thing on that front, we want to figure out how to support them. So he's an interesting story in his own right. And I'll say this just up top, given what his family went through with his father, he's already a very good story, because it's
Right.
by virtue of his success and his sister's success and their contributions, right? They've broken a cycle that a lot of us have trouble breaking.
Right.
So he's there. There are several stories loaded into what's going to happen on Tuesday that they're co-sponsoring.
And Akbar
So
is done. He has a magazine, I believe.
I don't know.
Akbar.
I don't know about a magazine. I know he's he recently was elected to city council,
No,
and one of the large
Akbar, his
former
father.
councilwoman, huh?
His father, Akbar Prey.
He did a book.
Okay.
He did a
He,
book. Yeah,
yeah,
he did a
that's
book
what.
about
Yeah.
his own story and his own reckoning.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think all of us
His
who
name has been around, so you know,
yeah,
if it's familiar, it was a large story when, of course, when he went inside some years
Right.
ago.
Mhm.
yeah,
One of his sons worked with us in the city of Orange, and another one of his sons I grew up with. He died at a young age. So Akbar yeah, he has some beautiful children.
yeah. Is he's from Newark originally, isn't
Yeah, he's from Newark. Yeah, he's a
he? Yeah,
Newark. Yeah.
because I think that the way and this will be an interesting conversation with his son. I don't know how old he is, but of course, the way I know Akbar is from boxing,
Mm,
right?
wow.
When he was involved in boxing as a promoter, along with Murad Muhammad and those guys back in the day. You know, yeah, that's how I.
I knew him from somewhere else other than that.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, and um, and of course he had he was talking about well, he did do one of Sanford Rick's fights out of East Orange when
Mm,
Sanford Ricks was the junior lightweight champion. He was
Remember
my best
that? Yes.
roommate back in the day, and of course he and I were talking about doing a deal before I accepted my contract in New York and moved to Philadelphia. Uh,
mhm.
but that's how I knew Akbar and so forth from the boxing world.
That's a
So
whole nother level to this conversation.
yeah,
So he
I,
was a promoter, not a boxer.
yeah, I didn't know him as a boxer. I knew him as a promoter, right?
Okay.
And
yeah.
because he was doing boxing. Do y'all remember where that on Main Street when you come in up Main Street, they used to have this rink right there to the right, not too far from where the fire station is. They used
Okay,
to
so
do
you talk about on the highway portion. Yep.
yeah, when you coming up right there on the right hand side, there was like this big tennis rink where they
Yeah, they
had
used to give parties and everything. The name
right
is gonna come to me. Rally Racket Club.
Riley
Rally
Racket.
Racket. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where
Yes.
he used to do fights at in there, and that was one of the last fights he had done with my friend Sanford Ricks before he wound up getting incarcerated.
Mhm.
And then, of course, he and I were talking about doing some business after I had turned pro in New York and was negotiating with a couple of different folks around in New York and in New Jersey, and of course, the folks in New York at Tiffany offered me the best deal.
Mhm.
So, but that was you know my involvement with him. But at that time, he had some great ideas for how he wanted to move young fighters in the city of Newark. Particularly in the pro rank. And then remember, he had the luxury of having at that time Murad Muhammad, who had Kwawi Muhammad. He had Matthew Saad Muhammad.
Right.
So I mean, these cats had world champions. So
When Rod wanted my uncle as a trainer, and this the late John Davenport,
yeah,
and his fighters. We had those conversations.
mhm,
I remember those
yeah,
days.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
What's interesting as before we venture off into the show, I'll tell y'all, man, that you know we had an opportunity in the city of Newark. I believe we had an opportunity in the city of Newark to really control a major portion of the boxing industry,
Yeah,
right? But
I
we just
believe.
we didn't seize that opportunity. I just
Wh-
don't think we did that, and that's always a failure on our
Right.
part because it is always a matter of unity, right? Everybody sort of wanted to do their own thing, and everybody kind of big in their own space, as opposed to coming together and one doing right by the fighters. That was one,
Mhm.
and then of course
Mhm.
two
That's
being
the
able
big.
yeah,
What
because there was a lot of talent in the
what
city.
what was is it the title? Was it a commissioner? Who was the
Larry Hazard.
Larry Hassett,
Mr. Hazard, right.
Yeah, Larry
Yeah.
Hazard at that
commissioner,
time
hell of a
before.
fighter, once a great martial artist.
Mm.
Yeah,
Those
every
martial arts
Monday.
just had a 25, March number 25.
Yeah,
Him
Yeah.
and Uncle win the amateurs together and the nationals together back in the early 60s.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Larry was a good fighter himself.
Yeah.
You
He
know,
did a number of my fights.
yeah, he was an excellent referee.
So-
You know, and then of course,
mm.
we all sort of followed some of the same tracks. I mean, Larry went on and went to Essex County College, and the
Mm.
rest is history. He got his master's, pursued his academics, and now he is in charge of the boxing commission of the state of New Jersey. And what's interesting is I ran into him recently, and he is
Oh, he's
interested
still
in coming on.
involved.
Yeah, he's interested in coming on the show.
Mm.
So we're gonna invite him on, Zaid, to talk to him and get into some conversation with him because
You can tell you
really,
about the mess I got
Yeah,
my
because
ass whooped.
that would be the the
I
untold
still think,
story of boxing in Newark, New Jersey. Because
yeah,
there's a lot of history about and to speak even today, you have the young man. I believe he just had a is it Shakur?
Shakur
He just
Stevens,
recently
yeah,
had a fight because I know my nephew. Well, did they go to Las Vegas or was it in Newark? But he just recently
no,
had
he
a
fought a
fight,
couple
and
months back. He fought down at the Prudential Center.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right, yeah,
That's that's
okay,
that's that's considered his home base.
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Mhm. So,
So Newark has, and I'm not saying it doesn't have, it still has. The problem is still always going to be around our unity, right?
right.
And when folks recognize that because remember, one of the things happened with Sugar Ray Leonard was that he had a guy named Mike Jacobs, right, a white attorney, who saw the valuability in him, and what they did was is that they got together and put together an investment group, right? And imagine had the business people in the city of Newark saw that in Shakur, as opposed to him signing with Top Rank, right? I
Mm.
mean, Shakur is a millionaire now. I mean, you see his grandfather driving around Newark in a Rolls Royce. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, I mean, this young man has done very well. Of course, he relinquished his titles because he could no longer make that weight. So he's now going up in weight to challenge, other fighters in the division. But
Mm.
but I think Newark still has quality fighters in the city. The problem is, just boxing is really a poor man's sport, right?
Okay.
But it obviously has multi-million-dollar opportunities. But
Mhm.
you've got to put people in those spaces to get those opportunities, right? And the problem is that you know we have not really, and I say we, meaning that those of us who are somewhat successful haven't really come together and say, well, how can we put together what Mike Jacobs did down in Maryland for Sugar Ray Leonard? How can we put that together for the future Shakur Stevensons, right?
Mm.
But those things have to be done right because I mean, remember, Don King is still out there in the game.
Mm.
Don
I was
King,
gonna ask, yeah. I
years,
mean, he came to Orange too. He wasn't, yeah.
yeah.
But
But
why do you call it the poor
everybody,
man's
but
sport?
here's the thing:
Because
everybody in the game that's promoting got
mm,
in the game through Don King. Isn't that something?
mm,
Everybody that's a promoter now in the game got in through Don King,
yeah,
right? So when you think about Top Rank and you think about Bob Aaron came in as a lawyer working
Right.
for Don King for Muhammad Ali,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Doing contracts. And now, he's a multimillionaire. His whole family, all of them are lawyers, but none of them practice law. All they do is boxing,
mm,
right? They run Top Rank. His daughters, his
Once you
son,
reach that level and you start handling top money fighters, there's a lot
yeah,
of money to be made in it.
right. And I'm saying Newark has that opportunity, but it is about being able to put that in front of the right people, and then being able to organize that around people who can see the vision. And then you got to, and the same issue, Donna, with all of our people. Remember, we don't have a black united front. That's the problem,
okay.
right? On no
That's
level,
very hard to do in the land of
politically,
sports.
financially, business wise, we just don't have a black united front. So when everybody, or if somebody come and offer you a deal underneath the table, right?
Mhm.
Instead of you saying, "Well, no, I'm going to talk about the group thing," you start
Okay.
talking about the individual thing,
Mhm. Okay.
right? And that's what happened with most fighters, right? Um, I mean that was, I don't know if it happened to you, Zaid, but that happened to me early on in the amateurs before I
Yeah,
turned.
I can dig it. I left the sport in a firsthand way behind all of the cutthroat dimensions,
Mm.
promotion and
Yeah,
management
yeah,
and whatnot. I saw what happened to. So not only do fighters get exploited, but a lot of the great black and brown men who are great trainers get hustled too.
right.
Uh, when my uncle basically took a very raw Lennox Lewis who didn't do any know how to do anything but punch coming out of the amateurs and really shaped him into a complete fighter. And when it came
Mhm.
time for Lennox to fight for a title, his promoter cut his throat and brought somebody else in. Right. And we see stories like that over and over again. You mentioned Ray Leonard,
Hmm.
well, I remember being in the amateurs with Ray, and he had a great trainer and Dave Jacobs. But
Yeah.
when it came time for Ray to make that move, you know, Dave got reduced to being a bucket man, and Angela Dundee was brought in, and I mean, those are business decisions sometimes. That it's like, but the nature of those decisions are sometimes really, 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 really foul. I think when I go back to the era, that particular era, one of the persons that I'm proudest of, and the two persons that I'm proudest of, was Emmanuel Stewart and Tommy Hearns.
Oh
Right, and
yeah.
one
Mm.
of my teammates gave Tommy a tough time in the National Golden Gloves back in '77, Jeff Ferguson, but they stayed together for a long time.
Yeah.
When it came time for Tommy to make that ultimate move towards fame and the big money, he brought that black man that showed him how to be a man and to
Oh,
be a
he did.
fighter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's still there. That's a conversation that you and I could have all day.
And even and we're talking about Newark, and then there's a Philadelphia story too, because um, when Will Smith did the movie about Muhammad Ali, I think a lot of that was based in the Philly area.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I'm
But
correct.
Great Philly legend. Philly's got its own pool of legends in boxing.
yeah.
When it comes to the heavyweight title, it was Joe Frazier was the legend out of Philly,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
in fact,
Well.
The whole Rocky series is the
Uh-huh.
whitewashing of Joe Frazier's story.
Wow.
Right?
That's a good.
Rocky is more famous to real people in Philadelphia than Joe Frazier was, and then Joe Frazier was a beast.
Mm.
But what's interesting is that Joe Frazier may be the most famous fighter, but he was not the best fighter to come out of
Okay.
Philadelphia, right?
Hmm.
The best fighter to come out of Philadelphia was a guy by the name of Georgie Benton.
Georgie Benton. I know I was getting ready to
Right?
bring his name up for you.
And when I moved to Philadelphia, I moved there because of Georgie Benton. And we trained at Joe Frazier's gym. And George at that time had all of the fighters. I mean, he had all of the Olympic fighters who had come out, and my roommate at that time was Alex Ramos,
I remember Alex.
the,
Alex was from the
the
Bronx. I
bomber.
remember from the Junior Olympics on when he turned pro. I
Right.
remember him.
Yeah. So he and I were roommates when I moved to Philadelphia. And he had at that time he had Rocky Lockridge, he had Johnny Bump City Bumpus,
Them
he
two
had
guys.
he had Evander Holyfield, he had I mean everybody who came out of the Olympics at that time. So when I got to Philadelphia after I had signed, of course, with Tiffany out in New York, I mean, I got down there and it was like, wow, it was like boxing gods. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And and so to go in every day and be trained by George, somebody who almost beat Sugar Ray
George
Robinson.
is one of the best fighters to not win a title.
That's right. That's right. And
And
Sugar,
yet
and
he
remember,
beat some great fighters, some serious headaches.
yeah,
And
remember
Georgie wasn't a big puncher either.
he
He
wasn't.
was just
But
slick.
but oh, that's it. I mean, you couldn't. I mean, when you talk about all the style that fighters got in Newark, or you see brothers who can get out of. I mean, that was George. You couldn't hit him.
It was a
Right?
headache for Hurricane Carter.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Reuben,
Put on the list on that
yeah,
one. Yeah.
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 But if I could go back and think about what that looked like in that gym every day, oh my God!
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
it
that's
was
that's
the
incredible
talent
statement.
that was in that
Incredible
gym.
statement.
I mean, none. And what was interesting, Zaid, I tell you what was interesting, Donna. None of the fighters, when we were training, none of us wanted to leave when we all was sparring, right? Because we wanted to steal some shit from everyone else, right?
Yeah.
We like,
Yeah.
yo, I'm nowhere. Like when your session was over with George,
You watch
it
it.
was like go to the heavy bag or the light bag and then go jump in the shower. Man, let me tell you something. We all sat at the ring watching each other because
Yes.
all of us had something that
I know
the
what
other
you're
one
talking
didn't have, right? And we would try to steal it, right?
about.
And
Yeah.
then and because we knew at some point, Donna, that George was gonna put us in there with each other, right?
Mhm,
And so we were like, "Yo, I want to know what he got." You know what I mean?
mhm.
And I could tell you there were some days, right? Like Zaid, so here's what we used to do, Donna, right? So back in the day, right, like in the early '80s when we were all in Philadelphia, so you know these cats weren't from New York and New Jersey. So I knew about Bentleys, I knew about Silver Shadow, I knew about all of the clubs. So what we would do is that we trained, right? Because we trained at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So we'd finish about 3. So George, he didn't check on us until like about, like 7:30, 8:30 at night. He'd hit the phone, we'll talk, yeah, everybody good, everybody had dinner, and then, because we didn't have to meet in the park, at Felmont Park in Philly until like
You
5:30 in the
did
morning.
road work in.
Okay.
Yeah. So soon as George get off the phone, we'd all
Mhm.
meet up, we'd all shoot to New York, hang
Because you
out.
had rules that you were supposed to be in by a certain
Oh,
time.
absolutely.
Okay.
You had to have dinner, and everybody we watch movies, chill out, because it was like a training camp, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we were all hanging out. Man, we come up to New York, because it take about an hour and a half, 2 hours, so we get to New York, park our cars, and because we take like 2 cars, and then we park somewhere, and then we shoot into the clubs, and we leave like around 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to get back in the bed. Someone is we didn't even get to bed. We just got back just to change our clothes, and we'd be tired as hell trying to do that
That's the
five or six.
days you look dull in the gym.
Oh
Right.
yeah, Joe Frazier, and so Joe would always be out in the park with his kids, with Marvis Frazier and all of them
Yeah.
in the morning. So we'd be out there, and Joe would always say, "Oh yeah, you motherfuckers wanted the rule." Yeah, he said, "I know you can't do 6 pounds now." This was Joe Frazier be like, "Yeah." He's like, "Let me see how fast you gonna go this
I
morning."
will see
You know
what.
what I mean?
Yes, right. That's
Oh man, we had some times. And what's funny is, well, I could imagine if we had social media then,
uh,
all that tape and pictures would be
uh,
phenomenal.
uh,
Oh
Because we
wow.
didn't we didn't record none of that. Because all of it was private, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it was just us, and but it was amazing, in terms of all of the things that we had gone through and learned, which was absolutely incredible. But when we get that brother on, we could talk about some of this with him,
Yeah,
Zach.
and we can't
Yeah,
forget about
and he's
uh,
probably he's younger. He could be our son. He's younger. All right. So I
well, I
don't know how
don't
much he knows,
I,
but he knows a lot about his father, the man, and the father, the myth, the father, the legend, and the father, the lies.
well,
Okay.
before we
Very
leave the
sensitive
boxes,
about that.
story, I don't want to forget Wally Muhammad from Orange, New Jersey. So
Yeah.
I don't want to not mention his name. So yeah, that's it. We got to do that panel because there's a lot. That's a story that's hasn't been told
Yep.
in its fullness and the order, its greatness.
Well, of course, y'all know this is the disciples, and of course tonight, our beloved Queen, and of course the one and only council member at large, Roundtree, is running by herself tonight. But of course, she got us pitch hitting with her.
Thank you, God.
We're here to hold it up. So welcome, Roundtree, to the disciples.
Ooh, what
That's
a
the
day, what
powerful.
a
That's
day.
the powerful 3 words.
What a
Sis,
day.
Councilwoman, it's always what a day with you. You be, whew, God bless you,
I've been like,
and yeah, whew.
the phone died, so I couldn't do it in the car. I set my computer up at 5:30 so I could run back to City Hall. But then I had to run across town. It's just been like, and I was like, if I could just get back before it was off, I could just.
Right, yeah, because running across town, that could be like a 2-hour trip.
Well, for me, because then I got over there and somebody had a problem. It seems like I run to problems, not on purpose and not intentionally.
Right.
But when people run into me, they're like, "Oh, you know what? Can you help me with such and such and such?" And I'm like, Now what you can't do is say, "Here, take my number," because if it's important and urgent to them,
Right.
then at that point you have to make it urgent to you.
That's right.
Until you find out it's something you really can't handle later. But if
Right.
it's something that really needs your immediate attention, and
Yes.
they just were blessed enough to run into you to help them with it, then that becomes a whole other narrative. You have to have that conversation. You have to say,
And the calmness of your words and your voice and that prayer makes all of the difference. I know on the foreign front, I was the news. I have, you could say, Alexa, tell me start my day, and Alexa was talking about that submarine, and I guess they've come to find out that the submarine had imploded, and I was like, my goodness. And but I just I don't know if anybody else had heard that story prior to today, but today is like every day they was like, we're still looking. But
right.
today was the first day I heard about it imploding, and it was a
So I guess
person
they went
on there,
down. I haven't had
19 years old on in that. I
right
was
somebody's son or something, but I
yeah,
haven't had a chance to even follow um, the news or the current or the update for that story up until 2 days ago. They were saying there's still hope because
right,
they were getting some type of signal. Um, but those people who chose the profession. Some people say, why do people want to be police officers? Some people say, why do people want to be archaeologists? People choose what they want to do.
right,
And what comes along with that is because you made it to space, don't mean you're gonna make it to the bottom of the sea.
right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
I'm just saying, but the hope is, well, I did that, so now I can do this.
Right,
They've been looking for Jesus's footsteps, and they're finding their little things here and there, and the art. They look for these bones when the first man and the dinosaurs, fossils, and people do this. Now, my whole thing is they were going down to look at something,
for the Titanic.
the Titanic, right?
Right.
They've been doing this ever since the Titanic sunk,
Right.
and they looking to find help me.
Yeah.
Let me
Right.
let me tell y'all something. Do you know it took them 65 years to find the Titanic? Do you know that?
How deep because of the depth of the
The
water
depth
and
of the water.
That was
Yeah,
one.
but that was 65 years after it sunk in the early 1900s.
Right. But it took 65 years for them to find it. And that in my mind, from somebody who believe in God and believe in the spirit and the word of God, it with all the technology that America has, right? They have the ability to listen to the ocean. And it seemed to me like that boat did not want to be found.
Listen,
It just seemed to me
I'm
like it
still
didn't want to
trying to
be found.
figure out. Here's the question of the day. I did not study or hear, or did I do my research to find out what these five individuals were looking for? It's not like taking a tour to Europe, going to London and discovering some things, or going to Israel.
right.
It's a little different. You're going down. There used to be a sort on what was it? One of the old stations. I don't know if it was TV Land or what a few years back, and it was called Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah.
And those
Yeah,
folks used to live in the underwater.
right.
I think in a submarine.
Mm-hmm.
But the ocean, I'm still, and I'm going to, because I'm not an oceanographer, I'm not any of that, but I'm still wondering, like, has anybody ever determined how deep the ocean is?
Oh, the
Yeah.
depth and different part.
Yeah,
And
because, and the reason I say that is because you could send something down here and go out
uh
2,000 feet and and it's a
Yeah.
whole nother depth because
Yeah, that's what I say. If you ever been to any ocean, part of the ocean, or it's amazing. You have to be, in different parts of the world, and you can look at the water because at some point you can see right there. You can be standing because it's so high, like the sand has your bar has come so high, but you can almost in some places you can fall off a sandbar and be, so you have to understand when you're out there. And I remember one time, being in a Caribbean down in Jamaica, and when you're looking at the water and you see schools of fish, and I remember just looking and I seen a school of fish and they go by you, and then another school of fish and they kept getting bigger, and I said, well, it's time for me to go because I don't want to wait to see what the bigger school look
hey,
like.
you went on back up to the top. Were you on one of the islands?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Were you on an island and went scuba
I was
diving?
No, I was in Jamaica. I was just you just stand in the water, and
Oh, okay.
as you stand, you can sometimes a
You
school
can
of fish
see.
to come by
Right,
you,
I know.
but they
I
were
got.
getting
I thought
bigger
you
and
went.
bigger.
I thought you went on an escapade and decided to go down to the bottom of the sea and ocean.
No, I don't. I don't. I've done like a glass bottom boat, but scuba diving, and I'm a swimmer. I know how to swim, but it hasn't, like you said, there's a
So do
lot down
I.
in that
But I can't
water.
drink that much water, so I'm very
That's
careful.
right.
Yeah,
Brother Riley, go ahead. I heard you
yeah,
guys talking about boxing when I came on. I don't know how we ended up, we ended up on that subject because the story now of the day is they found those five
Yeah,
individuals, and that looked like a very small submarine too.
it was
it
a
was. Yeah, I mean, in
what do they
order to get
call
in
it?
there, they said you had to sit with your legs crossed, right?
Yes.
You couldn't sit with your legs out. So for 9 hours, right, which
Ooh,
is what the trip was, you had to sit like this, and there was five people on it,
so you saying
and
like
they
it
had
is?
one toilet on there, right, that was in the open. So you had to, if you had to go to the toilet, you had to do that in front of everybody, right? I mean, it was just an
Like
amazing.
who thank God for the people who want to do this, but it's amazing that the mind of individuals would actually put their bodies through that to discover what.
Yeah, they
Or just to be the
remember.
first, to maybe just to be the first two, you
Well, they
know.
weren't. No,
They definitely weren't the first.
no, no,
There have been
yeah,
several firsts.
they've been going down there, for quite a while now since they found that. And so, and the guy who created that particular submarine, he was on that
I
particular
know.
voyage as well. So the CEO was on there along with four other people. So he had a co-pilot himself, and then of course the father and son and another person. So it was five people in a very cramped environment, but
Yes.
they wanted to go down and they wanted to see the Titanic. They were explorers, and
Mm,
so that's what they wanted to do, to go down there and see that. But that was again, it was a 9 hour trip. That's why they had enough oxygen, right, for 96 hours, right, so
mm,
they could go down, right, they could see that. But remember, in that environment, you both have to inhale and exhale, right, in that very small space. So if anything goes wrong, I mean, remember, carbon monoxide can kill you, right? Oxygen is one part of it, but carbon monoxide is what's coming out of your mouth that can kill
mm.
you if it's not circulated. That's why in the plane, the way they have oxygen running in a plane, it circulates in a plane.
Right,
But that wasn't the case inside that. So, and what they said was the explosion, or the implosion, it exploded from the inside. They're saying that it happened fairly quickly, like an hour and a half into the trip,
right.
right?
Hmm.
And then all of the parts just sort of dwindled down near the Titanic, and that's where they found it at.
So you know what? And I know we have a lot of African American inventors that have invented many, 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 many things, as we know, that you never get to hear about. But um, how do you say testing is so important? So I'm interested in trying to find. I know we're not going to spend time talking about what these guys did. We're going to pray for them, pray for their
Right,
family, trust God that right now it's a very difficult time for the loved ones of those 5 individuals. And in spite of who was the hero and whoever was on that vessel, is right now not even relevant, because we have 5 lives lost as a
Right.
result of them trying to get some information pertaining to something that another tragedy that happened many years ago. But at the same token, testing is so important, and that still doesn't mean that things won't go wrong. As you
Right.
can see, they could have sent down 25, and the
Yeah.
26th one was the one that didn't make it. But did you
Yeah.
send right? But did you send 25 down with 4 dummies in it with their legs crossed, with some type of air in them to determine, or what was the actual
And
out?
some things, it just remember, when all of when the astronauts, they went up and they had the teacher on the
I remember.
ship. And remember how every school was, the big thing was schools were going to be tuned in to see the actual
Take off.
takeoff, and what they got to see was something that they did not expect. That
Tragic.
it blew up, immediately, and it was just
And
like
they've
you said.
sent many missiles and many spaceships, and they've sent a few of them made it successfully,
Right.
and assisted.
Right.
Well,
But
I would tell y'all this, and we can change the topic, but
Change the
I'm not
trajectory.
I'm not an explorer, right?
right.
I'm not
No,
interested
you
in.
on the other side of the explorer.
Yeah,
Explorer. You
yeah,
the lawyer. You the one that's going to say, now listen, legally,
yeah, yeah,
theoretically,
yeah.
there's a possibility.
I'm not in the speculation game. I'm in the evidence game.
Oh,
So so I don't want to
We
speculate.
just want to pray. We want to pray for those
right.
5 families, or one of them, 2 of them weren't related. I think it was a son and a father. But
Wow.
I just want to briefly ask about what you were talking about with the boxing.
We were talking about the untold story that we need to tell about the boxing, and the many. Well, we got 2 boxes right here. Let you talk.
Let me ask
You
as
better
well.
tell it while they're still alive.
Do you know Akbar Pray?
I know. Well, um,
That's how we got on the story. That's how we got.
okay.
It's
So
his
But
son.
Akbar
son,
actually,
son is going to be on the show.
Akbar was a smooth. They said a good-looking guy. That yeah,
That's true.
yeah. And I do have a cousin. I have 2 cousins that are his children.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm not calling no names. One of them's doing very well in California. They're all the ones that are in my family are they're doing very, very extremely well. When his birthday comes around, we all wish him a happy birthday. It's so unfortunate what is going on in his life, but I do know some that have gone on to be with the Lord that came right out of Newark.
Mhm.
There's some boxers, Marvin Hagler, that was right here in the city of Newark. Untold stories. And the problem is, who remembers him? He's gone now. His mother they lived in the projects. My godmother honored Marvin Hagler. She honored his mother because he was doing so well that he came up to Scott's Manor to present the roses to her when we gave her the award. I was like 14. I was 14 years old. But I remember the story because I don't know, it was a little bit, his baby's mother, somebody named Patricia Hagler, used to come up to Credit Doctors and was one of the patrons that when I was 18, was selling furniture to Larry Hazard, which is still with us. He's 78 years old. Has touched some of the most, I guess you would say, famous, had been with not just Reft, but actually been in the company of some of, and most of the greatest boxers across this nation, some here and some gone. So we have 2 I see sitting on with the disciples tonight, and that happens to be Ed Riley and Zaid Muhammad. And I guess that they can throw their dukes up and get serious if they need to because they know the game. So, Yanu Akbar, that was a whole nother story. And I guess if I put my mind to it, I could think of some more. But yeah, Hard Rock King. I don't know.
His son is coming up at 7:00.
Yeah,
Who?
right.
Yeah, Akbar's
He's a
son.
young councilman
What?
in Broadway.
I know.
Yeah, young councilman in Broadway. They're doing an event on Tuesday. There's this film called 848 on.
Oh, and you know, he and I, this is
Sponsoring.
crazy. This is so unbelievable. So me and the girls, we talk. We're on social media all the time. Here I am, have a cousin right in Broadway, and I don't think we've ever.
Yeah. You can't make this up. How this stuff comes together.
Yeah.
Can't. That
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
We actually got on the conversation just in terms of that. And let me ask you a question. How old did you say Larry Hazzard is?
78.
I can't believe
He's getting up there.
Wow.
He took good care of himself. Larry took great care of himself. I haven't seen him in several years myself, but he's got to be getting up
He
there.
don't look like it.
He doesn't. You know, he doesn't. I feel like I want to say what's that little comedian where he said, "Damn." Would you say how old
Kevin
somebody
Hart? No, not Kevin Hart.
Yeah, Kevin Hart said that to this guy he was interviewing, and the guy told him how old he was, and he said, "Damn." He said, "I ain't that old."
Larry was
the guy
not
was like, "Yo, why you say it like that?" Yeah, but yeah, Larry looks good, man. You know?
And I'm sure he has his own creative stories.
Oh yeah,
Well,
it was what we were saying. Roundtree is that of course, you know, me and Zaid, you know, we all have our stories about, you know, of course, Larry has his involvement in our life and so forth, and so, you know, he refereed some fights for me as I was coming up, and that's how I got to know him.
He refereed 2 of my losses.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's how we got to know him. And so, but Newark has its own boxing story, right? It has its own boxing story, and you know, and had some great fighters come out of it. I'm lucky enough to have started out at the same gym where Hagler was when he was leaving. I'm lucky enough to have, you know, been able to be a sparring partner to Reggie Jones, who was the Olympic champion from Newark, right? I'm lucky enough to have you know, come through that gym on 8th Street with Holly Edmond, and to have been able to, you know, have the amateur career I had, the professional career I had, and boxing, you know, saved my life in the city of Newark. I mean, I'll tell anybody that it was between that, in terms of, you know, because the other opportunities in Newark was to be, you know, a chemical dealer. Right, you know, you could choose to go that way to be involved in chemicals, or you could choose to be involved in boxing. I chose boxing.
Yeah, and that's a mouthful. I mean, you know, how many folks that let's look at who let's stop for a second and appreciate our founding producer for a minute. How many folks do we know can come from the city of Newark, New Jersey, boxing and wind up being a top-notch lawyer, radio host,
come on.
developer?
Come
All that.
on.
Look at what
poor frog don't praise his own pond.
right? These are kind of stories. These are stories that don't get told in boxing. That is a great story.
But
Right? I didn't go anywhere near.
I don't want to take you off the subject. I don't want to take you.
Great story.
Baba, I don't want to take you off the subject, but let's just stop at these are the stories that don't get told. Okay, period. Boxing, socially, entertainment, political. There are women and men that have made a mark in history. We're going to just say the city of Newark because that's what we're talking about. But nobody even hears their name anymore. I was looking through some old papers, and there was a lady named Jenny Lemon. There was a lady named Louise Epperson. These are people that when I say there's a woman named Larry Starks.
Yes.
These are people that there's a man that was named Honey Ward. These are people that when we were children, if even yet born, that touched all boxing, you name it, they were part of it. Even though
Yeah.
Calvin West liked the horses, that's a whole nother story. but
Mr. West.
yes, but the
It's sharp.
stories are
And,
untold.
and let me say this, Roundtree. There's a guy named Councilman Branch that we owe a tremendous amount of.
Buddy G. Oh, wait a minute. I was on my way there. Because
Okay.
there's a gentleman that works in City Hall right now.
Getting right into
When I
it.
was a child, Kenny Watkins was his legislative aide, and he's
Yeah.
still here.
Okay.
Wow.
He's
Wow.
still here. He
Yeah.
worked for George Buddy G.
Yep.
Branch.
Wow.
And when he was a Central Ward councilman, and
Yep.
now he's legislative aide to Councilman Crump. He's worked for Crump. He's worked for Walker. He's such a good worker and has such great work ethic.
Yep.
Nobody wants to let him go. And if they ever do, I'm gonna grab him.
Yeah.
That's how
Listen.
good
Let, let-
Buddy G taught him.
listen. We would not listen. Boxing had all of us came through that program because of Councilman Branch, right? You know, all those fights I had at Shabazz when I was a child was because of Councilman Branch, right? And I remember, man, I used to go down. I used to go down to City Hall and come there. I'm a child, and the councilman would always say, "Man," he would say, "What's going on, Ali?" He said, "You look like Muhammad Ali," and he would encourage me all the time, you know. And then he would always come in the gym, and he would come to Ape Street. I'll tell y'all a funny story, Browntree. He would always come over to Ape Street Gym, and I'd be in the gym shadow boxing. And do you know he would change his clothes and get in the ring and shadow box with me?
Really?
This is real. This is the real truth. But I was still an amateur at the time, and when I turned pro, I remember him telling me, he would always say, "Look, man," he said, "you're gonna be a hell of a champ, man." He said because he always thought I had my head on right, right. He would always say, "You're not arrogant, you're not bodacious."
You're not cocky.
Yeah, he would always say that, and I would say,
You're
"Man,
not arrogant.
right." And for me, it was, because I always believed that if you could fight, it wasn't necessary to walk around and yell and do all of that, right? So I was like, yo, I was confident in my skills.
You
You
was
know,
different. Because
you
let
know,
me say this. There's nothing, I don't think there's nothing wrong with the couple that I know that did that type of talking. Because if I go back and I look at some of the old footage of boxers, because I like the television station Reels, I like the History Channel, and some of those channels sometimes will tell the actual story of some of our famous boxers or athletes. And the truth is, they had to do that because in the times that some of those were coming along, they just they felt that they needed to entertain to to draw the crowd, and it just so happened that they were good. They were good at their craft. Muhammad Ali was excellent. He was great at his craft. He was one of the most phenomenal boxers uh, of our time.
All time.
But he was also an entertainer. People love to hear him quote or
his, his,
prophesy. They used to love.
his
He gonna hit the
rhymes.
floor. He gonna hit the floor in 4. I'm gonna knock him out straight in 8. I'm just making up stuff. Those are just,
Float like a
you really
butterfly.
round three.
but but that's people was like, okay, let's see what he said. The
Yeah.
anticipation of the entertainment and the prophecy of this man's legacy, and so that's his. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Like a bee,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like he was
Yeah,
dropping,
but
he was spitting lines, before rap became real popular.
That's right.
And
You know,
one of the books I read, it was or it might have been a story about the relationship between Muhammad Ali and Howard Cosell, and how Howard Cosell,
Howard,
how
yeah.
they had their relationship on
camaraderie.
camera, but how
Yes.
he was always concerned about him as well, um, because of the times and what people sought to how people sought to harm him, whether it be physically or through words or whatever. But that was interesting that that they developed a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because he did Howard Cosell did the same thing, believe it or not, with Sugar Ray Leonard, right? When Ray Leonard came along, he
God
built
did
that
was linked to
kind of
that.
relationship. Yep, he built that same kind of relationship, and so it's funny because I met Ali I think 3 times in my life,
I
and
never met him.
yeah, and each time I met him, it's funny because we never really. What was funny is that the majority of the conversations we always had was boxing to some degree, but we always talked about Islam,
That's why
right?
I wanted to get to that.
Yeah, we talked Islam, and we talked about
Common
praying.
conversation.
Yeah, we talked about Elijah Muhammad, right? We talked about Minister Farrakhan. We talked about James Shabazz, right? We talked about Malcolm X. He would share stories, about his life and how he came into the Nation of Islam and what that meant to him and the racism he had endured as a child. And those were conversations that I valued because we did, and then when he got to boxing, it was always he would always just say train hard, right? He would always just say don't play, you know what I mean? Because you can get hurt, and he would say, look, man, get up, do your road work, don't smoke, don't drink, don't have, extra sex when you're not fighting and all that stuff. He would I mean, he would talk to at
Sound
least
like Bible to me.
yeah, at least the conversations we had, Zion. So,
So I had the opportunity to meet him one time. Seen him many. He did come to Newark when they named
Street
after him, which was not far from where I was living at the Cooper Scott Mansion on Court and High Street when they changed Waverly Avenue to Muhammad Ali Avenue.
Did he ever come by the mansion?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
I just know, not that that doesn't mean he didn't, but the truth is there was another guy that was responsible and made a lot of money off our boxes. And I met him on a lot of occasions, talked to him, and was in his company. Let me see whether y'all can guess who I'm talking about. Nope.
No, you just
But him
spoke
too.
about with the hair, the promotion
What's his name, y'all?
with the hair.
Don King.
Yeah. You just spoke. We were speaking about him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's nobody if you've been in boxing, you've been in Don's space. If you've been in boxing, so we all have, especially listen. I was around when he got Mike Tyson, so I think I was at damn near every fight Mike ever had in Vegas, in Atlantic City. And that was because of our relationship with Don King back then, So we were always.
I remember Mike from the amateurs.
Yeah, Mike was a killer, So, but what we were saying, Roundtree, is that Newark has its own stories, right? When it comes to boxers, right? And I'm telling you, Roundtree, because I think I might be a little older than you, but I can tell you that, the talent that was in Newark, right? When I was coming up at Dukas AC was, oh my God, was amazing, right? And then when I went to 8th Street, but I used to sit there and marvel at those guys. When I think about Gerald Hayes from East Orange, who used to train on 8th Street, but this dude, he just didn't have the right management, but what a fighter. When I think about Spider-Man, Spider-Man was a dude who could fight out of Newark, Roundtree, but the thing about Spider-Man was he couldn't fight unless he was high. That's how good he was. He had to be high, Zaid, in order to fight.
In order to win.
And he would win.
And he was from
and the thing is Lee Black used to take him all over the world. He would fight, he would go anywhere to fight. But you had to have some weed for him, man. You had a joint, let him get high, he'd get in the ring, and you couldn't hit him, man. And man, but if he would only,
I guess if he was going for a belt, it wasn't going to happen. Because nowadays, Boy, unless you
Oh
ain't
yeah, now of course
you
you
can get away
get
with
tested
that.
going in, you get tested going out.
you
Yeah,
can't even
back
take
then
an
they knew
aspirin.
it.
You
Yeah,
be,
they
wait a
knew it.
minute. You better be careful eating an everything bagel because the pumpkin seeds on the bagel. I'm serious.
That's right.
Right,
Yep.
right.
So you talking about like this whole like Patterson had Reuben Carter, you just named
Yeah.
Gerald Hayes from East
Yeah,
Orange. I said Wally from Orange. And even going back, you had Tony Galinto from Orange, Newark, several. This area, boxing, I mean,
and
it
that's a shame that we don't have a boxing program like that now in the city of Newark. We don't. And
No, 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 no. Now
oh, slow down. Okay.
we have 4 places. We have
they
4
got
gyms.
some
I
stuff
know.
going on. I think that don't listen.
Shakur's grandfather, I
Where you
know.
think Shakur came from? He from
Yeah.
Newark now. We got
No,
something
no,
going
no,
on.
no.
And
What?
we've had several. So they've been bringing it back, and I don't want to speak on an area because it's not my expertise. I'm very, very careful. But before I make a blanket statement like that, I would probably take a look at what's here.
Uh-huh.
Because I know Nas. I know y'all know Nas.
Uh-huh.
And Nas was running a
Right,
program over in the Westward.
right.
There's the clubhouse where I think Shakur Stevens' team was doing something over there. I believe they still are.
No,
Um, okay, so that just recently stopped, if it is.
right,
Like two
right.
weeks ago, maybe.
No, about a month ago.
Okay, so this is my issue with programming. Period. Whether it's boxing, drama, poetry show, whatever it is, consistency and perseverance.
Uh-huh.
Whatever we start, we got to find a way to keep it going.
That's right.
Right. That's
We
right.
cannot give up
That's right.
because it didn't work out on Martin Luther King, and we got to find a way, as we see it, sliding out of Martin Luther King to get on Springfield or South Orange. I mean, something that's really good, and you have a base of parents or a base of children or a base of community leaders. And the reason I say that is because, I was blessed to deal with the faith community, but I'm gonna just go back beyond the faith community and talk about my mother. Because my mother came to Newark in the 1930s when black women were having a very difficult time. And she just gave it because she was black. And a woman who was put down by one of her peers who said, no, you can work for me, but you got to pay me a whole lot of money in my shop, and I'll give you a corner. And my mother was like, oh no, I know I want to do hair, but not quite that way. I done cleaned the white folks, I done cleaned some houses for some folk, for the Jewish community and whatever. She cleaned for some really great families that treated her better than the sister did.
Right.
So guess what it encouraged her to do? Go get her own.
Space, yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so instead of us going to find a way to get our own, if we have some money, and if we don't, then pull some folk together that believe. If they believe, they got to believe. Now, we talk about the guys that stand in front of the properties. All these properties are around the city of Newark were boarded up. They standing out front of the property, shooting, smoking their weed, drinking their stuff, right? Taking their, whatever they doing. We walk by them. Somebody decides to walk by and buy that boarded up house. These group of fellas, as the mayor says, gets mad because now they got to move because somebody bought it. Well, why didn't you take some of that money you was shooting crap for or selling them drugs would come together and buy the house? You complaining about the man that came in and bought it, but the mindset of us, it's not us, but it's just limited. You hear what I'm saying? I know Jonathan, the sergeant of arms, has come on. Well, my cousin getting ready to come on in a minute, brother sergeant of arms. How you doing, my cousin?
Well.
I don't know that he
Shennell is your cousin?
girls.
Hey, Shennell McCloud, your cousin?
Akbar Praise son.
Listen, he got 2 sisters that surely are. So that means he is too. But anyway, because I said earlier Brother Prey was
Okay.
a well-loved man. I think that's
Well, yes, he was.
I think I can put it that way.
And love is, and
By the
he,
female
yes, and
population.
love is, and he spread the love. But Ed and Zaid, we really have to put our foot in and put and do that panel on boxing, because that would be really, really
That would
interesting.
be awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Donna,
That
I
would
see
be
that you're helping me.
Saeed, and Riley. Put some of their watch this, and promote it with a picture of them. It's in a small box now, but in their boxing shorts on the sheet.
Yeah.
That,
With our
that,
glasses
that
on.
is funny. That is funny. But we do know we are reaching the end of this wonderful segment. By the way, Reverend Roundtree, Councilwoman Roundtree, we need to have you actually on more often, right? Because we need to have some good conversations, because you're so full of like history, knowledge, and contemporary stuff at the same time, because you know what's going on now, but you also have a wide ranging history as well. So we definitely have to like have a segment that's just for you, that we just have this like conversation. So we've got to do that sometime really
So
soon.
watch this, Jonathan. As a kid, right? As a child, my mother had all kind of folk running through the mansion. Which, by the way, we're having our first event there tomorrow in her honor, Madam Louise Scott Legacy.
Really?
Lunch.
What time? Tom,
Yeah,
wait.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to the whole group. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's on my phone. So you know, there were times when parents said, "Do you see the children are to be seen and not heard?"
Not her. Yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't to be heard, but I heard a whole lot. And what's amazing, that while I wasn't trying to contain it, I ended up containing it.
Right.
I ended up, it's all in my head. Like my father used to tell me things, and he'd be telling a story, God rest his soul. And I would go up to him, and I would never be stupid enough to say, Daddy, that's not what happened. I would wait until after everybody was going to say, Daddy, that ain't the story. You know, because I was there and I remember. So that's why I tell folks all the time, remember what you say to me, because 5 years later, I'm going to come back and say, no, this is exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yes,
anyway.
absolutely.
Yes, I do have a lot of history. I call some names that Barbara probably remember and recognize, and probably Mr. Riley as well. But if you don't recognize them, there's something somewhere written about a Louise Epperson, a Lenora Holman, a Jenny Lemon, a Renee Starks, a Honey Ward, a Calvin West, a Earl Harris, people that, Irvine Turner, people that came along, Marcus Garvey, we named the school. These are people that, and we had a school named after, not a school torn, I think we named Robert Tree after.
And we do, I know, I just want to, because we do have our guests in the background, and you know,
well, and before we leave, I just want to say, her counterparts aren't here. We just want to make sure that everybody know that even though they're not here, they're always here with us.
Absolutely.
And that's what I wanted to say too, Brother Jonathan, because you don't know the circumstances behind the absence. You might know and be familiar with what's going on with my brother, our comrade, Pastor Ali. But I want you to know that while Lady Belina Ali is holding it down, that we are praying for Pastor Ali. We're praying for him. We're praying for his health. We're praying for his heart. We're praying for clearance. We're praying for whatever it is that's going on with him right now, that God is going to heal, set free, and deliver. And our Minister Haqq Muhammad, we thank God for him. And we know that Allah is the best of planners. And listen, because Brother Riley opened up the door for the disciples, and the three of us do what we can, we're going to bring 9 more to make that 12, one by one, for the rest of the year, and see how we can bring some more information to our listening audience and those who are viewing All Politics and Local. Of course, our mayor has his company, Picnic Company. We don't use the word picnic. Family Fun Day, coming up July 22nd. Please feel free to call the mayor's office at 973-733-6400. We just held an expungement clinic on Monday for 90 people. Only one walked, with having to deal with coming back to the next one to handle a situation. But they were done on the spot. I'll be doing 4 more along with Blaze, some outstanding attorneys. We didn't just hand them no application and say, go fill it out. We did they did the background checks and everything. But it's good news. There's good stuff out, people. So I'll be letting you know when the next dates are coming. And of course, tomorrow we'll have to be having the Madam Louise Scott Legacy Brunch here in the city of New York.
Are any tickets still available?
I'll send it to you. I'll send you the link and everything.
Because I just found the flyer.
Oh, good. There's a QR code on it.
Oh,
I'll send you the link.
And thank you, because we'll definitely.
Jonathan, we love you.
I love you.
Come on and let's get it moving. And thank you, Pastor Ali, Minister Haqq Muhammad, for joining us, and the disciples on APAL. All politics are local. The number one hip hop. All right, I'm gonna stop.
That's my little show.
Hey, love you much, we'll see you soon. Maybe sooner than next month, because I really do want to get you back on.
Keep me posted, Jonathan.
Going on,
love you, Zay. Love you.
And when you come, Reverend Roundtree, come back and let us know if we're going to see Lincoln Park Music Fest.
We're going to see that. It's happening, because I'm hosting gospel night. It's on the way.
Thank you so much. Don, you have anything else to prolong this? You want to throw something else out, Don? Don, you want to throw something else out? We've been trying to get to the next segment. 5 minutes.
I'm from Newark, and I'm proud of it. That's it.
Okay. All right, cool. Love you much. We might try to get you back.
Hey, John. Since we've taken, some of the sisters' time, why don't you let us say hi to Roundtree? You know what I mean?
Hey,
what's up? It's so good to see you.
Likewise, I'm loving
trying to match your energy right now. I'm trying to match it. You see, I got a cup of coffee.
You know, I haven't even had a cup of coffee today. They're gonna find me one right now, though.
A good cup
My
of
next
coffee.
stop.
That's right.
So good to see you, Reverend.
Likewise, Shennell, you can ready to light it up and let them know, as the CEO of Project Ready, what's going down. Yes. Sisters are making it happen. And in the words of Aretha, sisters are doing it for themselves.
Yes.
And everybody else. Okay, I'm finished.
we want some RESPCT.
Yes.
That's right.
And we'll let you know, because, what did she say? Find out what it means to me. Yes. We'll let you know. The sisters, between me, Donna, and now Shennell's on here. Man, we gonna and Baba likes this kind of stuff. Jonathan's like, and now, scene one.
I'm like, well, we got 45 minutes. We got some more time. Oh, Donna, you're gonna add another question.
I'm also grateful for Donna for giving me my extra time before the show started.
So we know.
Thank you, Miss Donna.
All right.
Love you guys.
Bye, Reverend.
Love you. Great show.
Take care. Hey, welcome.
Hi.
And this our next segment. We are very honored to have Shennell McCloud, the CEO, the founder of Project Ready.
I am so honored and thankful and humbled to be here. I was on the show probably the first year I started Project Ready.
Wow.
Literally year one. And we're 6 years old now. So it's full circle, having the opportunity to come back. I have so much more to say than I did the last time we were together, but I am very appreciative to be on All Politics Are Local. And I heard that I can really be very open and honest. It's a safe space. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, then let's do it.
And she's absolutely
wouldn't have it any other way.
She's absolutely right, John. She actually came to the studio the first time she came on.
That's right.
Show.
That's right. That's why you asked.
That's right.
Where is?
Were you there? Were you there, Mr. Edward?
I was there.
That's what you were. I think you interviewed me, right?
I don't think it was me. I think I was.
Oh, I think it was Asia.
It was Asia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Asia's birthday is today.
Happy birthday, Asia.
Yeah.
Oh yes, happy birthday, Asia.
Yes. Yes. I'm glad to have this go full circle and talk about what's been happening over the past 6 years.
All right. So, what for our viewers who don't know, what is Project Ready, and why did you found it?
Yes. So Project Ready is a social justice organization that focuses on activating Black and Brown voters across the city of Newark. I am born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. I have my children in Newark, New Jersey. Everything that I know and love is surrounded by Newark, New Jersey. And one day I was in a conversation with a group of people who were looking to activate voters across the city of Newark, or at least I thought that they were. And in this conversation, someone said, well, maybe we need to start to register more parents, because if we register more parents, perhaps more parents will get access to the information that they need in order to be able to vote, so we can see higher turnouts. And what is the largest city in the state of New Jersey? And ultimately, hi, Kimberly, good evening. And ultimately, someone piped up, someone who looks like us, and said, if you register more parents to vote, you run the risk of them not voting the way you want them to.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Who said that?
Yes. One day
I know you trying to be a good daughter and all that, but see, I'm a rock thrower and a hellraiser. I want to know who said that.
Wow.
I was like, wait a minute. I am not in the right room. I'm not with the right people. This is not what I want for my community. It's funny because I was just doing an interview earlier for another radio show, and they were asking me, like, what are the impacts of becoming a mom on you starting Project Ready? And at the time of me thinking about Project Ready, I was a mom of one. Now I'm a mom of three. I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And I think what happened for me is hearing that from someone who I thought had the best interest of my community in mind prompted me to lean in and make sure that we actually have an authentic, genuine organization that's working for our people, because that's what I want for me, and that's what I want for my daughter. That's what I want for my son. That's what I want for my other daughter and all the children that they play with. So Project Ready started probably maybe 2 months after. And since then, we have been really, truly staying true to our mission to activate voters.
Now, you also have the Parents Union, right?
The Parent Summit.
The Parents Summit. I'm using the wrong language, but I just go, see, I'm an organizer. And I see organization that needs to happen.
That's right. That's right.
Apple. So I want you to spend.
There needs to be. Let's claim it now. We should have a Newark Parents Union, and there is a National Parents Union that is doing some amazing work. One of my good friends, Tafshir, runs the National Parents Union. That's a good organization to look into. But
we had Margie. We had I want to say, name jumped out of my head. One of my former students, Margie
Joseph.
Margie X, or
yes, the poet.
Margie Joseph. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
She's actually one of my former students who we interviewed her when she went down to DC as part of the Parents Union.
Yes, that's right. That's right. What I love about Newark and what I love about our community is this is the anchor by which advocacy, social justice, and our ability to be able to combat social injustices, this to me is the Mecca, and this is where it begins. And so I also found it not robbery to want to start and anchor the work of Project Ready, the work of activating voters, and also the work of being able to see the through line in between voting and education in a city like Newark, in a city that I know and love. I did start a parent summit, and the goal of the parent summit was to bring parents together from across the state of New Jersey to be able to get what I believe teachers get and any other professional or any other person that's trying to develop what they get, and that is development and a safe space for people to be able to be fully in touch with their mind, body, soul, spirits, prompting them toward action. And so the New Jersey Parent Summit started off at 99 people. And then in just 3 years' time, it grew to about 400 parents and families Camden, Patterson, Plainfield. However, we paused the Parent Summit due to COVID-19 because we weren't able to gather together in whole groups. But the secret is it's going to be coming back. I'll share that on All Politics Are Local. And I can't wait to give you all the details coming soon.
All right. So the I love what Project Ready stands for, right? Because you stand for voting. You stand for more people being involved in the process.
And for justice.
Right, because more people involved in the process is necessary for justice, right? Like that is the whole point, right? The point of the more people who are involved, the more people who are accountable. So I really been wanting to have you on for a while, because I've been doing this thing and I've been trying to provoke people with this concept of compulsory voting that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I
can't wait to talk about that, by the way, Jonathan. I'm ready.
Right, because I know that you have been talking about the low voter turnout in educational elections, the low voter turnout. Can you talk to me about that? Like in Newark, there's been incredibly low voter turnout recently. What is your estimation of that, and why do you think this is a problem?
Let me answer the question if I can, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Right, if I can, right? Because I mean, this also takes place against a backdrop of us just getting our school system back just within the last few years, right?
Yes.
So that gives another layer of urgency to the question. So I just wanted to inject that for Shennell to consider.
Right.
And I'm sorry, just let me inject one. If you can, I don't know if you want to go back that far. We were really, 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 really excited about President Obama. It was amazing to see the numbers. And then it just like fell off the cliff.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Ms. Donna. I'm so glad you brought that up. The next time we had to vote for our president, our voter turnout percentage was, guess how much?
How much?
42%. 42%. And Newark trailed as one of the lowest cities in the county. The last time we had to vote for a president, and here we are coming.
That was 2020. Is that 2020?
Yes. Yep. And here we are coming up on our next presidential election. And it's not just the presidential, because like you all say, all politics are local. We just left our school board election. We're coming up on a presidential. We're also coming up this November on what we just voted on, which I hope everyone here was able to take part in that, the primaries, which dictates who the Senate and who the assembly members are. All 40 seats in New Jersey are up, all 40 seats. And then in 2025, we're going to be voting in the next governor. So we have some very mission critical elections that are coming up.
And don't forget to mention after redistricting. So we had a redistricting. And so like, for instance, you had the election where Cody ran against Senator Gill and these, what does it mean, and how can we help people understand what's going on?
And the interesting part about that is a lot of the redistricting that was happening impacted our Black women who are in office, a significant part of our Black women. So there's a part of this that is we're not voting. There's another part of this is that we have to. But then the next part of this is that we have to run for something. And then the final part of this is, because I'm on All Politics Are Local and people are saying I could be real, we have to also make space for people who are running for office to be able to occupy those seats and to be able to take us to different levels that we might not otherwise if we didn't make more opportunity for potential new leadership to be able to come into these spaces. Doesn't mean that we should be getting rid of the existing, but it does mean that there has to be opportunities for us to be able to make space. So, now, just one thing before we go, Jonathan, I wanted to do another round robin quiz.
But I wanted to get to the first question, right? Like, because I know that I asked the question, a bunch of other questions were asked. We're asking a lot of different things, but I want to get back to the basic, right?
Yes.
Why aren't people voting?
Yes, that's a good question. I believe that people are not voting because, interestingly enough, even after all the work that I believe our organization has done and some others like us, people still don't know. That's number one. I believe the second reason that people are not voting is because once they do know and they start to understand the nuances of all the politics that exist and all the things that potentially may be keeping people in the seat, they feel a bit of voter apathy because they're not necessarily invested in the people who are taking the seats. And so without that and I mean that at all levels, by the way, I mean that locally, I mean that statewide, I mean that nationally. So people start to walk away from the process once they're aware of the process because they don't believe that they may be able to fully realize someone in the seat or themselves in the seat to be able to bring about the transformation that our community needs. The final thing I'll say, and this is what Reverend Roundtree just brought up to us, she said something that I thought was important right before I got on, which is programs come into our city and then they leave because there's a thought that perhaps they may have failed. And it's so interesting because I had a reporter talk to me right after the school board, and he's like, Shennell, it's still 3% of people that turned out to vote. Is Project Ready going to stick around? Or do you guys still have a role to play? And I'm like, slow down. Yes, what we're doing is something major here. We are shifting the culture of voting, whereas people may have been growing up not even understanding the importance of their vote, the importance of their voice, and how all of those things impact every single little thing that we do. And so, no, I am not shying away from this movement. I don't think other people want to shy away from this movement, but we've got to work through some of those kinks.
And also just I think Essex County stays right around 30% voter participation. And I was listening to Al Sharpton and National Action Network and their the younger part of Nan, and what the young people were saying to him, well, this is not our fight. When like the question of slavery may come up, and they believe this is not our fight, but we have to help them understand. How can you say it's not your fight when you're looking at your grandmother and it was her fight so that you didn't have to fight? We have to really simplify it and get them. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you're not invested in anybody on the ballot, go vote and write your name in there. But we do have to. I believe we have to help them understand. You're not voting for somebody because you're going to be in a relationship with them. You're voting because of the issues. Like it's an issue person. It's not the person. It's the issues that person is supposed to represent for you.
But I feel like when we have these conversations, we're speaking to people who already vote, right?
And it's so funny you bring that up, Jonathan, because what I was going to say, and I've been doing a lot of making sure that through our organization, we are focused on intergenerational conversation around this. So that we can
come to that. Come on, I want to hear that.
Yes, so that we can accommodate for every voter. And here's what I want to know. From the ages predominantly of 40 on up, it's not, or maybe 45 on up, it's not even a question about whether or not voting is important. In between the ages of maybe 18 and 45, it's questionable. And I'm in that age group. I'm 36 years old. I'm in that age group where a lot of the people in this age group are questioning whether or not they need to be involved. It's from our youth up. But I have done probably 6 different tours to 6 different schools toward the end of this year. And it's elementary and middle school. And when I told them that we have 161,000 voters in the city of Newark, and only 3% of them showed up to the last school board election, they are saddened. Some of them are a little disgusted. And most of them, when I ask them, are you preparing yourself to vote? Is voting important to you? The whole classroom, all hands go up. All hands go up. It's not even a question. And so I think what has to happen is we need to address the group in the middle, because I think that group is like they're experiencing all the things we've talked about: voter apathy, lack of access, except the list goes on. And when we start to bring these intergenerational conversations together, I think that also can prompt us to be able to move forward so that we're all voting.
And you know what else, Shennell? The last election we just had on the primary, it was a day where some voting places were actually in schools, and parents or caregivers came to pick up the children during the election day, and they still didn't vote. So it was right there for you. You had to come to the school.
All you have to
and
do is walk in.
Right. And you picked the baby up, but you didn't go in there and cast your vote. You were already there, and they still didn't cast their vote. That was the most shocking, you know.
Was just as rough, Miss Donna, because I've done some of the poll work before starting Project Ready. People will be coming into the school and I'd be like, hey, today it's time for you to vote. And they're like, who do I need to vote for? And obviously from a C3, you can't say a name.
Right.
But there'll be C4s there. They say the name, you watch people go right in, they cast their vote, they walk right out. They don't know who that person is. They don't know what they stand for. They don't know how they're going to impact any type of budgetary decisions, any policy. And so it's dangerous either way. The voter that doesn't vote is dangerous, and the voter that does vote but doesn't have any understanding of who they're voting for is also equally as dangerous.
I would. Here's the thing that as you know, like many of you know, I'm a debate coach. One of the forms of debate that I coach is policy debate. Yeah. And one of the things that we teach is if there's a problem, you have to have a solution that can solve the problem.
Yes.
Right? And from most of the voting conversations that we have are like, well, we need to educate the voters. We need to talk to the voters. But that's the status quo, right? The thing that strikes me about voting in the United States is the government takes your taxes. They make sure that they take property. They make sure that they get the money. Government gets the money. But we leave it up to private organizations to get out the vote.
That's right.
To make sure people vote, right?
That's right.
And
why is that? And why is that?
Well, I mean,
that doesn't make sense to me either.
Right, because it seems an obvious answer is that all politicians actually do work for their constituents, and the majority of people aren't their constituents.
Yes.
So
let's also be honest, Jonathan, since we're getting into debate land, which is fun for me. There are also some most elected officials who, even with wanting to acknowledge what their constituents want, they don't want to see a lot of people voting, because then that can't support them in dictating how they can continue to occupy that seat.
Right.
Which to the point that you were making earlier, is one reason why I think there has to be a partnership in between private organizations and also citywide, countywide, statewide institutions that are able to work in partnership in order to get things done. For example, our Essex County Clerk, Chris Durkin, he and I have been working together for over 2 years to get free postage on the vote by mail application. You should not have to pay. You shouldn't have to pay to vote, period, or to fill out the application. And finally, he not only made it so that there was free postage in Newark, but he also made it so that there was free postage across the county.
Nice.
And it's an exciting moment for us, but also I think an example of what it looks like for both parties to hold each other accountable toward the end goal.
And what you said, I think is like great, because I think that when you're talking about you are advocating for Newark getting free postage, and then once Newark gets free postage, then the county does. And just like with other things, when it happens in Newark, it can happen for others.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to push this idea a little further, right? And start this conversation about compulsory voting. If you has been tried in other countries, and I think the conversation is good because the pushback is exactly what's needed. Like the status quo is the way things are right now.
Yes.
And if we keep doing the same things, we're going to get the same results.
Yes.
I think the conversation about compulsory voting, like if we can force you to pay taxes, right? And with fear of criminal penalty. If you have to vote or take a civics class that explains to you that where the money we take from you works, right? You have to pay a small fine or a civics class, no criminal penalties. It's just there's a need for education. You
Yeah.
can watch the video, you can come in, right? There are all sorts of things that have to be done where the government educates.
Yeah.
If you have compulsory voting, and if you advocate for it just in Newark, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Newark would dominate state politics, right? In ways that would transform power within the state.
Absolutely. Power within the nation. Let's be honest. I was doing more studying on compulsory voting, and it looks like there are 22 other countries, 21, as of 2022 that actually engage in this. That's 22 other countries. And based on the research that I've read, people are all saying that it actually yields results. But here's the thing. In order for us to get the results from this type of action, the state and or the nation need to actually honor the penalties. And we have to be able to be set up for success to be able to make sure that that can happen. If it does happen, I think that people will do it. And I think that it could transform, like you said, politics across the board and maybe push us past certain social injustices that we see right now. It may even be able to refresh some of our seats, our elected seats, so that we can see more people in the seats. So I'm absolutely all for it. I will say, through the work we've done with Project Ready, I think we have so many different tactics and lead up to an election that it almost may make a member of ours feel like they're either missing out if they don't go and vote, or maybe even perhaps I go as far as to say feeling a bit embarrassed if they don't go out to vote. Now, granted, some of these things are more of the psychological consequence of not engaging in a process, but through all of the activities that we run, the first year we zeroed in on the school board, our members took up 11% of the electorate. We now have 26,000 members. The second year, our members took up 36% of the electorate. Last year, our members took up 42% of the electorate. And hopefully I'll be able to come and do a part 2 once we get our results. I am very hopeful that we can get close to 50%. And I contribute a lot of that to what I believe is similar to what we're identifying, which is people feeling like if they don't do it, it's actually they're doing something wrong.
And I like the concept of all hands on deck. There are multiple solutions. There are multiple things that have to work together. I think that when people push back against compulsory voting, the first thing they push back on is the penalty, because they assume that it's going to be a criminal penalty, right? They're like, we don't want people to go to jail. We don't want government to use this to send people to jail because we're Black people. We know they're going to criminalize, and we know they're going to use it to try to, someone didn't vote, Black man gets shot or Black woman gets beaten, right? Like they know that they know that the history of law enforcement, et cetera. But I think that if it's posited as not a law enforcement action at all, right? Enforcement, minor fine, or education class, right?
Yes.
And the penalty could be like, like if you want other things for the city to do, right? Then you have to either pay this fine or because when you go in to get your license renewed or your permit renewed, right? If you have an existing ticket, then you can't get it until you resolve that ticket, right?
I do think though that we have to acknowledge the runway that needs to exist for people who may be newly preparing to vote due to some of the other experiences that they've had. For example, those who have been formerly incarcerated that are now exiting and moving into a probation period, having that access to vote. There's a ton of things that they may need to learn just from a technical standpoint, because the process of voting, especially after COVID-19, has changed significantly. So I think there's also people who are immigrants and they may be transitioning to becoming citizens. There's a learning process that needs to happen. And so I do think that we have to, democracy has to be both bold, but it has to also show empathy. It has to be supportive, and it has to ultimately lead us to what we all deserve and what we mostly desire, and that's freedom. So if we're able to establish those types of pathways for people who may need time to learn, I still think that we can do it. We just need to be thoughtful about how we execute against it.
Amen. Right. Like, and we're in total agreement. Like, one of the things I think about, if you're talking about compulsory voting, then the onus shifts to the state to make sure that they educate.
Yep.
Make sure, like it becomes a demand, right?
Yes.
Because you can't take away my money if I don't have the days to vote, right?
Yes,
like you just have one day to vote. I don't have early voting. I don't have, like, all of those questions. The state now has to answer.
Yes.
They now have to tell you. Like, Donna's always telling me, well, you know, you can vote in any election up to 40 days before in New Jersey.
Yes.
Right.
That's right.
Now I didn't know that.
Much time. There's so much time, and there are so many different opportunities. It needs to be very similar to that of needing to have a license wherever you go. Like, you need to be able to vote wherever you live. You need to have a license wherever you need to go. For me, and some people may think this is a bit extreme, but it also needs to be like air to breathe and what it looks like in the absence of having air. During COVID-19, there were so many different policies that were being pushed that ultimately dictated the health and well-being of our people. And we saw in Newark the disproportionate impact that the pandemic had on us. And meanwhile, all these policies are being made in our honor without our voice, without our input. That's a problem. And this is why I compare voting to breathing, because I don't know about you all. I lost a lot of people during the pandemic. I lost colleagues. I lost family members. And I'd even go as far as to say at some points, I couldn't find myself. I couldn't find myself in all of this. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of mental health and wellness predicaments that people found themselves in during this time. And even then, there were still policies made on our behalf. So voting, to me, turned into a healthcare issue, right. And something that you needed to do just as much as you needed to make sure that you went to the doctor, that you wore a mask, because that's how many different things were happening right before our eyes that we couldn't even catch up on, because a lot of us were passing and or suffering. And by us, I mean our Black and brown people.
And Shennell, I'll give you an example. Assemblywoman Timberlake, she observed in the chambers during an assembly hearing, two men arguing about abortion, and she was just like, two men, arguing about the right of a woman to have an abortion, and it doesn't even affect them. Like, to sit back and to sit back,
two white men at that.
Yeah, but to sit back and to observe that, and you're like, you're arguing about something that will never ever affect you.
It will never affect you.
The hypocrisy of privilege.
And
yes, that's right.
And the one thing to even add, a nuance to add to that, is I've always said that the abortion decision is going to be solved by white women, right? Because what happened in Kansas, when white women who normally vote Republican, who normally are like, hey, we want small government, who supported all of the politicians, and in red states, they can't do anything without that block of white women, right?
That's right.
And in Kansas, they were like, oops, y'all gone too far, right?
That's right.
And I think that when you're talking about, like, so in reality, and this goes back to our other point, it's not white men just who are making the decision. That decision can't happen without large, like, pluralities of white women consenting to that.
And I'm gonna be blunt. I think that you're right. White women are organized and they can potentially push the pathway away from the state of democracy as it pertains to abortion. That said, there's an entire voting block of Black women And Latinx women are on the rise. But here's our problem. Our problem is three things. One, we're not organized. Because if we were able to get organized, we'd be able to see significant outcomes, potentially even quicker than white women. That's number one. And number two, to the point of Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlake, and shout out to Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlake for being there in that moment. There aren't enough Assemblywoman Brittany Timberlakes in those seats to be able to break up that fight. And I don't mean break it up like stand in the middle. I mean break it up from a voting and a policy perspective.
Which is why, again, like that compulsory voting takes it from individual private interest determining voter turnout to the state determining or pushing voter turnout. And I think that transforms politics. Project Ready is very influential, right? Like you've done an amazing job in only 6 years in terms of getting the ear of a lot of people, right?
Yep.
Will compulsory voting be a part of Project Ready's platform going forward?
It will definitely be something that we want to consider and think about, but also, and I think I made this point earlier, before we launched, I preemptively launched into a push for that. I want to be very clear about what the runway needs to look like for our disenfranchised voters, most of which reside in our city.
Right.
So I mean that from a state perspective. So with the outline of that and being thoughtful about that, I absolutely would consider it and would love to push, quite frankly, whatever needs to be done in order to get more of us out there voting.
Here's something that I would absolutely pledge to do. If Project Ready decides that that is something that it wants to move forward with, I would personally help in any way possible, because I think that it's something that is that the consideration of it, right? The understanding that certain state laws may need to be changed, but we control the governorship, and both houses inside of New Jersey, right? Like the conversations will be so enlightening, because I think that even though many of us might be initially scared of it, people who will be more scared of it are people who don't want people in Newark to vote in 100,000, right?
Let's be honest, there are some people right now who are scared to vote.
Right.
And we can get into that. We can get into that on another day. Maybe there's a late night episode that I can be on. We need an all politics or local after dark.
No, but that is part of the conversation, right? Like that's legit, and that's part of the conversation.
Yes, they're afraid to vote. So when we talk about fear, my thinking is that that's not even. I'm not even sure if that's part of the equation, because there are people who may feel afraid to go and vote because they don't know if they can comfortably vote for the person who they may want to vote for that may not be the person that someone told them to vote for. So there's a lot of that is happening here, and we have to dismantle some of that. I do believe compulsory voting could be one method for us to be able to implement in order to see change. People, I believe, underestimate the true power that we have here in our city. We're at the epicenter of every conversation. We're at the epicenter of education, economics. We're at the epicenter of democracy. And I love that about our city. I love that about us. I think if we continue to think about some of these innovative ways, or it's innovative to us at least, like compulsory voting, what it means to implement more of a mandate to vote, then we can start to see a shift. There are a few other things, though, I will say, Jonathan, that we could stand to do that may also make some shifts. Like, number one, the school board election is in April.
Right.
It shouldn't be. It should be in November. There are other places like Plainfield, New Jersey, for example. They vote for their school board in November. They see a significantly higher turnout. Granted, they're not as big as a city as us, but
actually, Shennell, I think everybody does, with the exception of maybe Irvington and Newark.
Irvington and Newark, yes. Or we're the only ones. Why is that? My guess is by design. My other guess is we need to change that. That's number one. Number two, people still have to work on election day. Why is that? The only people who should be working are people that are giving their service to go and work the polls. That's it. That's the only thing that should be happening. Or if you're working for campaigns, that's understood. But we should not be working on election day. These are simple policy shifts that also, if we can make them, in addition to thinking about something like compulsory voting, we can see more people vote.
And I think that it's even to advertising things that already exist. Like, I didn't know until Donna told us like a few years ago that in New Jersey, we literally can vote 40 days in advance.
Yes.
Right.
That's
like,
right.
I did not know that. Right.
That's
like
right.
I did not know that I could just walk into a series of places and give my vote. Like I did early voting in not in the last election, but earlier this year. And I did not realize how easy it was, how fast it was.
Seamless.
Right.
Seamless, easy.
Right.
Absolutely. Other thing people don't know, Jonathan, is people don't know that you can vote and you can use ballot boxes that are placed around our city to be able to vote. The vote by mail conversation came in. I think it swept the nation. A lot of people felt very untrusting about the process. I'm not going to lie to you. I felt untrusting about the U.S. Postal Service after some time of examining the process. But now there are actual ballot boxes that allow you to go and slip your ballot and you don't have to walk in anywhere. You don't have to deal with any lines. The ballot boxes are open to you night and day up until 8 p.m. when the election closes. So that's another opportunity that people have that I don't think they know about. On a different hand, though, we need more of those ballot boxes. They need to be everywhere so that people have that access. And right now we don't see that. Another reason why I think the partnership in between city and state and national institutions and organizations like Project Ready, like others, are important, because while we're implementing these systems, we also have to make sure we're holding the people implementing them accountable. And there do need to be more ballot boxes. I opened up a voting power museum downtown Newark. It's been a very exciting experience. We actually close our doors tomorrow, but I had my guys over in New York build me a ballot box. Now it's unofficial. You can't vote in it, so I don't want to give that impression. But they
educate on it.
Ballot box. What'd you say?
You can educate on it. You can teach on it.
Yeah, we teach on it. But what I'm noting is they built that ballot box in 3 days, and it only cost me about $500. So I think that there's an opportunity for us to see more of those in every ward, in multiple places in every ward, so that people also have that access to vote.
Let me ask a different question. Let me shift the direction of the conversation.
Yes, Mr. Muhammad. I was waiting for you.
I'm looking at this, from a perspective of struggle, the fight for the vote, right? And now that we're in a particular climate where in a lot of places there's a fight to make voting less accessible, there are real efforts to actually repress the vote.
Yes.
Right. So what should happen first? Compulsory voting. This is to both.
Okay.
This is to you too, Jonathan. Right? Or same day registration, or making voting accessible. As we're talking about it, because the layers that you're talking about now is a question of accessibility, right? Making voting more accessible to the average person.
Yeah.
I would say permutation. If you're asking me part of it, in debate, we have something called a permutation, right? Where it means, can you do two things at the same time? I think compulsory voting makes it necessary to do all of that at the same time.
Yep.
You say compulsory voting, you have to make it more accessible. You have to, it overturns voter suppression, because at the same time you can't suppress the vote, because you're telling people they have to vote, right? So all the private organizations that want to only get a few people out, they're undermined. You have to make it more accessible and advertise where it is, because we already talked about in New Jersey, you can vote 40 days in advance. It is accessible. We just don't know it.
Oh, right. Yes, that's right. And can I add?
Well, of course, I'm not just thinking about Jersey. I'm thinking about the drama in Florida and
everywhere,
and Texas and North Carolina and all of them. Where a whole lot of our folks are really, and where folks are being intimidated.
Yes.
Right, Jonathan, your sister's told some stories about folks that she's trying to organize in Georgia, and if they're facing intimidation.
Mhm.
That's right. That's right. I, Jonathan, I love to talk with your sister more about that offline if possible.
We can have you on now.
If I may, I do want to highlight New Jersey really quickly before we go national. The first thing that needs to happen in New Jersey is New Jersey needs to stop looking at all of these other places like Florida, like Georgia, like Texas,
And look at New Jersey.
potentially even Pennsylvania, where the vote is being suppressed, and they need to stop saying that's not New Jersey.
Right.
That's the first step, because when people absolve themselves of all of the happenings, what winds up happening is it happens to you. And one of the reasons why we have to continue to vote, we have to continue to push for strong democratic policies for our people, is because one day Florida could look like New Jersey. Georgia could look like New Jersey. And then what? And then what? So I think that has to be the first step. And then after that, I would totally echo everything that Jonathan said about making sure that we do this and same day voter registration. I don't know why it hasn't happened yet. It needs to happen. We all need to get behind it. The New Jersey Institute for Social Justice has been doing some amazing work in order to organize tons of organizations like Project Ready to push this work forward. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have it.
Ryan was on the show last week on a very different matter, but we have a very intimate relationship with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. Let me ask a different question. This comes back to one of the negative inspirations for what you do, and why I throw the rocks the way I do. Right? We mentioned the case of our daughter Brittany Timberlake in the assembly, right? My beef with our elected leadership is that once upon a time, when we were in the quest of a real, bloody fight for the vote. Yesterday was the anniversary of the 3 civil rights workers going missing in Philadelphia, Mississippi, right?
Right.
Okay. When we did get access and we actually put people in office, we put the kind of people who were in our struggle and who understood as a matter of principle that you had to keep your base mobilized and informed. Right?
And you're saying that the elected officials,
experience that you talked about.
You mean the elected officials have to keep their base mobilized?
Yes.
I don't know. I grapple with that a little bit, because I think that it's on the base to keep the elected official doing what they supposed to do.
Yeah, that's true. They're both true.
And that's been amen.
I see y'all.
Amen.
Well, but
the voting conversation is it's the leaders always serve their constituents. They always do. You're idealizing a time where Gibson betrayed the Black community, and Mary Baraka was like, it's not about Black nationalism, it's about third world socialism, because of the betrayal, because he served his constituents.
Gibson, who had when we highlighted him at our voting power experience, 68% of people turned out to vote for his election. 68% of residents. We've seen that trail down ever since.
Yeah.
Right.
What were the numbers for the 2008 for President Obama?
I don't know President Obama. I only know
okay.
I don't know. I think no, don't quote me on this, but I think it was roughly 55%.
Okay.
And that was actually the highest that we, and I'll come back to our thread and make sure I update the actual amount, but it was the highest we'd ever seen.
Since Gibson.
No. So Gibson on mayor.
Oh, later. Okay, in the local.
8%. The last mayoral election, I think it was somewhere around 30% of people that showed up.
But what I was going to say, but why it's incumbent on, so when I said as a councilwoman, you do have to do, because you know who you serve. You serve people who work 2 and 3 jobs, who have children, who are going here, and who really want to be involved, but are tired. So how do you find you got to find ways of reaching out to them too, because yes, because you wouldn't as the representative know what's going on if the people don't inform you, but we have to find ways to reach out too, because many of our, in particularly urban communities, our people are, like you said, one of when we have a lot of immigrants are scared, so you have to find a way to make them comfortable and find some trust in you, but also the most of them are just tired and overwhelmed. So we have to balance how we can get them or find a way. Um, Mine was through social media, inbox me, text me, do something, and make sure that when a question is getting ready to go up, and particularly big redevelopment, demand that there are meetings and developers have to come out, that we just can't say yes without speaking to our people.
That's right. It's a good point, Donna. I mentioned earlier, we opened up a voting power experience. It's a 3-month long pop-up that allows for our visitors to engage in different moments in the civil rights movement that prompted our ability to be able to vote. So we highlight Ruby Bridges' classroom. We highlight the sit-ins. You're able to sit in a diner, etc. But the beauty of us opening up that experience is we've had so many people that came from the civil rights generation,
right,
matched with people like me, younger people like my daughter, and they were having conversations together. And some of the women and men, they're like, I was there. I remember we got a 1964 bus from the civil rights movement that's at the experience. And you can see people get on the bus. They were like, I remember sitting in seats like this. I remember having to go to the back of the bus. And so, good evening. And so I think that what has to happen is we have to open up more. I call them healing spaces, because I think it's a space for people to come.
Good language.
Yeah, it's a healing space. People who experience this, and people who have no idea about those experiences, but now have new age experiences,
right,
like what we see with George Floyd, like what we see with other portions of our racial injustice movement. And that type of openness and conversation, I think, also prompts us toward action and reignites people from feeling so exhausted from preaching and talking to now being able to say, now you can see what I went through. What are you going to do?
And our Fannie Lou Hamer. I believe nobody even realized that when she did that testimony. How many
In
people
Atlantic
realize
City,
that
New
it was right
Jersey,
here in New Jersey?
after
We have to
staging a
take
protest
something
on the
that
boardwalk.
something is so powerful that we have to take something like that and show that's our story, and show that, and this is why when you say it's not your problem, well, this woman from Mississippi came all the way up here and gave testimony. This is why it is your responsibility
It's
too.
all
It will always be.
problems.
Guess what? Now you're talking. Now you're talking, Councilwoman Donna K. Williams.
And I know we're running out of time, and I know we started late, but I just want to shift, and this can be very brief. Hopefully, we'll have you back on, and we could talk more extensively about this. But in the last school board election, I used an article that you wrote to ask a question to the people who are running, right? And it was a good article you wrote about controversy about the rehiring of the superintendent, and you talked about there needed to be more democratic discourse, right?
Right.
It needs to be so. Even though I pushed back a little bit about that in terms of they were all elected, it was democratic in nature. One of the things that struck me is that earlier this year, I believe this year.
Yeah, it was this year.
Right. No, I mean like a different incident.
Oh, okay, sorry.
North Star walked out of their school,
yeah,
and they marched to the mayor's office, right? And they were like, there's too much racism in the school. They don't hire, they're abusing Black teachers. and they went to the mayor's office for it.
Mm-hmm.
That the mayor, they were like, well, the mayor doesn't control any of that stuff, right? Like charter schools are not democratically accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And in Newark, less so because they answer to the state, not to the city, not to any local politicians. There's no democratic accountability.
Right.
Do you think that charter schools, and again, this may be a long question, you can just have a brief answer, totally okay, and we can posit this some other time, but I didn't want to get you on me quoting you and not give you a chance to respond to that. If democracy in education is so important, right? Should charter schools in Newark also be democratically accountable?
Hell yeah.
And so the answer is yes. And I think the open question for that is, well, what does it mean for any institution to have a democratic process? You mentioned the kids walked out. I'm also an alum of North Star Academy. I went to Avon Avenue School. I've been through all of the different schools.
That ties to KIPP too. And I got a KIPP child.
Yeah. I worked for KIPP for a few years. When those students walked out and they went to the mayor's office, the open question is, well, why didn't they go to their school board? Because the mayor actually is not responsible. The school board is. The open question for students who are demonstrating for North Star is sorry. What I meant to say is the students didn't realize that they needed to go to a board. They needed to go to the board that governs uncommon schools. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. And they went to the mayor, but the mayor ultimately has no say over what happens.
And even the board is not elected.
It's not
an elected board.
It's not an elected board. And I do think I've actually pushed a lot on this. And I do think a lot of the schools have been starting to come around to this. And especially after everything that we've seen with the pandemic, et cetera, and a desire for more fair representation, I think that they're starting to have a lot more parents on the board because there weren't enough parents on the board representing their constituency. But the bottom line is simple. There needs to be a democracy for any institution, and all institutions should be held to that process. The other bottom line is every institution is suffering. That's the other bottom line. I know that was on our agenda. I'd love to come back on to talk about that.
Right.
But the answer is yes.
Okay. And we definitely want to have you back on soon because I wanted to get into the democracy in education specifically, but we spent so much time on the compulsory voting.
Okay.
And we definitely want to have you back on. As I said before, when you are, if Project Ready is like compulsory voting is a thing, and we need to officially be like, hey, we need to have a forum on this with politicians, et cetera. We need to study this, or we need to start advocating for this. And this is what it should look like. Yes. Right.
And in the interim, we got a hell of a lot more community-based political education to do as well.
And I don't. And again, Zaid, I'm always pushing back on when you say that because I don't think it's an interim. It's not or. It's and. Right?
Yeah, I think that's right. First. I think that's right. And I'm committed. And I'll say this on an open forum. I'm committed to both things. One, making sure that the education can still happen, but two, making sure that we open up space to examine compulsory voting and research it accordingly and look at what it would look like for us to implement that in Newark, New Jersey. And I'd love for everyone here to be able to support us in that so that we can see if it makes sense for us to actually start to push for the policy.
Awesome. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. I think this is a good conversation.
Yes, please have me back on. We got to get into this education thing. I have a lot to say.
Absolutely. Right. Like, it's funny because I love having the educational conversations, right? Like I love that whole thing, but the compulsory voting just seemed like it would be.
Well, we started at the root of it. And that's the final thing I'll say. People are like, oh, we need this in education. If this summer alone, 10,000 kids are going to summer school in Newark public schools, 10,000 kids.
That's a lot.
That's a lot because they need it. And I don't think it's just all on, some people are like the district's that. We've been in this situation and COVID-19 has absolutely made it worse because we've experienced so much learning loss. But where we started in this conversation is on what counts, and that is how are we voting? Because however we vote dictates the resources and the tools that our kids get that move us away from 10,000 kids in summer school to a much lower rate.
I'm just going to push back on the last fact in terms of summer school in Newark in the Newark public schools at least, has been revamped. They actually don't do summer school for failing. These are all enrichment programs in each school. So
I want to share, let me share just to make sure, because
or at least maybe the high school and middle school may be working differently.
Yeah, some of them are working differently. I'll share the article that just came out on June 1st about this, that highlights the 10,000 students that are in need of summer school, not because they are looking to do extended project, which some of them may be, but some of them actually need it. And let's be honest, if you told me that we weren't running summer school in order to close the gap that now exists in a city where only roughly 27% of our kids are reading on grade level, I'd be concerned.
There is summer school, but summer school is focused on enrichment, like at least at science, right? Like science used to be the site of summer school. And there are others, at least on the high school level. I don't want to speak about this authoritatively because I just took for granted, based on what I saw and what I've heard, that they're not doing summer school for failing in particular classes. They're doing summer school all as enrichment so that kids can find other things as a way to close that gap, right?
Yeah, so, and I want to reimagine the concept of, I want us to work on the changing of our language on failing. Our kids are not failing. Our kids are suffering as a result of significant learning loss. And what we are doing is providing space for them to be able to get to the level that allows for them to be equitable and to be able to compete in order to earn an income, and the full gamut goes on. But I do just want to push on that, because even I've been a victim of, or not a victim, but a criminal, I say, of being like, oh, we're failing. The entire nation is struggling, right? We're all struggling. We just have to push past that struggle. You know what I mean?
Right. And I was meaning it in terms of literally summer school was used before for kids who got F's in the subject, right? So it was more observational. They got F's in a particular subject. But now summer school is literally like, here are a series of things that might be of interest to you in science. Here are a series of things that might be of interest to you in literature, right? So all of the things are enrichment programs, hopefully to get parents and kids to send, because we know that there are going to be a whole lot more kids than kids who got an F in a particular course. We know that there are a lot of kids who did pass, who might have done well, but need enrichment, right? So I believe that the concept of summer school in Newark has been revamped. A lot of times, a lot of what you read, like I push back with Mark Bonamo a few times in terms of just the stories that are done.
I imagine that's a fun conversation.
They're always fun conversations. He's a friend. I like him. But I push back on some of these stories because I'm like, you have to be able to talk to people who are officially in the board to be able to have this conversation. Because I think that a lot of they've mischaracterized a lot of what's going on in Newark. And so I just wanted to push back on that, because I know that Newark is thinking about enrichment programs, and their summer programs right now are enrichment build programs. They got a lot of pushback when they're like, we're not doing traditional summer school, right? They said, we're not doing traditional summer school. We're going to be offering a lot of different enrichment for kids. That's what they're doing, I believe. I don't want to fully be absolutist about this because, again, I'm not a board spokesperson, but I know that it's running a little different. So you're like, that 10,000.
I like your point about making sure we understand the distinction in between what was and what is now. And I think that that's also what we are seeing with all different things, with voting, with education, etc. Things existed a certain way. And now after COVID, our whole world has shifted and we're seeing things happen differently. So I appreciate you making that distinction. And I also appreciate being on the show and being able to talk with all of you. It's been a huge pleasure. And I am very, very hopeful for a part 2 with you all.
Absolutely.
And Shennell, our DJ Rhino wanted to say it's still the responsibility that they bring their grades up. He just wanted to put that out there.
While you're there, Dr. Claus will ask you the ritual question too.
Yes, DJ Rhino.
Absolutely.
He's reminding me. as you've been here the first time, I don't know if you remember, we have a standard question that we ask all of our guests.
Tell
When
me.
you are out here doing the work um, to inspire our community, to make our community better, what hip hop individual or group do you listen to inspire you and get you going?
Oh, this is a good one. It's the Jackson 5.
They
Nice.
got hip hop. What
Oh,
hip hop? But Jackson, that's it.
Jackson
But
Five,
but
that's
that but
that's
Jackson
my
Five is
answer.
this, that's a shout out to Naughty by Nature because that's who Jackson Five. That's who they sampled. Okay, but
But is there someone who would be more traditionally classified as hip hop who you listen to, rock to? Anybody like favorite, or it's
Big
just someone you rock to?
Sean. Big
says
Sean.
Big Sean.
sure.
Yeah, Big Sean. Yeah. I love me some Big Sean. And Drake is a close second, but I have to say I'm a little bit of they would consider an old head when it comes to music. So it's Jackson 5, Al Green, all
Wow.
that for me.
Well, that's Naughty by
Well,
down. You
that's
down
you.
OPP. That was Jackson 5 all day.
That's
Before they knew it was a Naughty by Nature song, they would be like, some rap group is sampling the Jackson 5. I remember when it first came out.
right.
They did a song over the Jackson 5. That's how
You
a
know
lot
what?
of
I
people would
need to
describe
listen
it.
to them. I need to bump them back up and listen to them again. But I love me and my my boyfriend were just having a big debate about this. He's like, "Don't you love Michael Jackson?" I'm like, "It's the Jackson 5 for me." He's like,
Okay.
"How do you not love Michael?" I'm like, "I like him. I love the Jackson 5."
That's fair. That's fair. All right. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
Thanks
being
for
on the show
everyone.
again, and we
Okay.
will definitely have you back again soon.
Yes, I'll keep you posted on compulsory voting, Jonathan. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so that's All Politics Are Local, another wonderful segment. And we have on, and Zaid, we have on Jeff Brooks and Akira Prey.
I don't think Akira's not able to come on, but she's got a.
Oh, she is. Oh, she is. Wow.
How are you?
And there she is. All right.
Oh, we loaded. And I'm trying
What's
to
up,
figure out how to
sis?
introduce this segment. Jeffrey, Akira, right, when we started the show, at the top of the show, our founding producer pulled out a dimension of your father's legacy that I had forgotten about. You, Ed Riley and I are both ex-fighters,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And he lifted up, and I said, "Oh my God, that's where I couldn't
Lot of
recall his
Mustafa.
name at." I said, "Wow."
Yeah.
Now, before we can get you on, right? We just have this heavy conversation about voter education and and Jeffrey chiming in, right? I'm like, Jonathan, bring him in the conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, we got all these conversations running together, right? But let me just say to both of you, you two young people that I haven't met you yet, but I'm already proud of what you're doing and how you're rolling, and it's important to our community.
Thank you.
This coming Tuesday, we're co-sponsoring a screening of an important film around an important bill that speaks to how our community has been over-policed and impacted adversely on the criminalizing of our community with excessive harsh sentencing during the drug war. And it's in a space that means something to you personally because of your father, right? So, I mean, I want to just thank you both for coming on. I want to thank you both for doing what you're doing, both not just Tuesday, but what you have been doing in terms of how you're rolling. You both represent, important spaces where, your generation or your community needs your generation to go, right? And I think it was very instructive, Jeffrey, that you were chiming in the text, right? On that whole question of voter participation, right? Because we need that from young folks who get voted for, right? You were already making the part of the point that I was trying to make to Jonathan and to Shennell, the importance of those of us who actually get elected understand their relationship to their base, right? So you bring in a lot to an incredible conversation, right? And I'm looking forward to what you have to tell us about Tuesday, about the film, about the Next Step Act, about your dad, and about the need to have a decarceration movement in response to mass incarceration.
Absolutely.
Welcome to All Politics Are Local.
Thank you so much. First, before I get started, I want to say hello to my sister Akira. Can't wait to see you on Tuesday.
Can't wait I'll be there.
She's gonna be flying in from Atlanta. I'm not gonna say who's my favorite sibling, but there's a lot of us, and she's definitely high up on that list. So, love you, sis. Thank you for joining in as well.
Thank you.
And thank you for having us on. As you know, all politics is local, and surrounding our area in Newark, New Jersey, I'm at the Rutgers Law Center for Justice. We're going to be doing a screening for a documentary called 848, the criminalization of America. It's was produced by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Freeman in Sleepy Eye Productions. My brother Wayne Conley is also a co-producer, and my sister Akira is also a co-producer in this project. And during this project, it highlights the experience of more than a few individuals who have been sent to prison for very long lengths of time for nonviolent drug offenses. It has some pretty high-profile names in this documentary as well, such as Freeway Ricky Ross, Kevin Childs, and of course, Isaac Wright Jr., who is now a famed and very accomplished attorney. He's representing my father, as a matter of fact. And, if you come out on Tuesday, I'm sure he'll explain.
An attorney right here in Newark. Attorney right here in Newark, yeah.
Isaac Wright Jr., correct. And he'll explain a full moment between him and my father. And so now he's representing my father. And I think we're making some great momentum moving forward and hopefully winning his freedom. But with that being said, we are sharing the experiences that families go through. We're sharing just how this system was designed for people to fail. Mm-hmm. It's not a rehabilitation system. It's a punitive system, from the judgments to law enforcement. And it's all a matter of just an investment that the elite and the government put money into. It's something that they make money from, and there's really no rhyme or reason why you would have individuals who are little to no threat to society upon reentry, that you would keep them as a taxpayer burden.
Right.
So in my father's case, he's 75 years old. He has
Jeff, Councilman, how many years has it been? It's hit 30 years yet?
It's 35, over 30.
35 years.
35
years. As a matter of fact, he was sentenced on my birthday in 1990. But he was incarcerated for about 2 years before that, if I'm not mistaken, Akira. So he's been in for, to kind of put things in perspective, and we all know what my father has been convicted of. But the same type of crime would give him a significantly lower sentence.
Exactly.
I would say about 10 years. I'm not, an expert on the law, but the most
the powder versus the rocks.
Yeah. So he was convicted of, but and it was for him, it was large quantities of powder cocaine and marijuana. But
if it was just the marijuana, he may be on his way home now. But because it was the powder cocaine too, that's what's But if it was just the marijuana,
these laws are tricky. When you think about where we're at federally, we're moving at a much slower pace than many of the states. So, for instance, in New Jersey, marijuana is essentially decriminalized. It's legal for you to purchase. It's legal for you to smoke. Many of my friends in law enforcement, if they pull you over and you have marijuana in the car, or even if they know that you're selling it, they're not pursuing any type of enforcement. It's an open, understanding when it comes down to law enforcement, because we recognize that marijuana has many benefits, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and many people are taking advantage of it in New Jersey right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, sorry, I know one of your brothers that He used to be in Orange. Wait, I think he's going on. He passed. Hassan and now and Omar works in Orange, and so we sit back and when I see him and talk about that's. And I remember reading one of your dad's articles. I don't know where I read it. I thought he had a magazine, but I must have read something
You
he
probably
wrote.
read Don Diva magazine.
Yeah.
That's
He used to be a regular contributor to
Yeah.
the
yeah,
magazine.
and
Shout out to Cavario and Kevin Childs.
and just and just just hearing him talk and and making room for his like it's too long 34 years what and I want to say it almost became the judges and the lawyers that got those sentences it became a celebrity thing for them. It wasn't about the rule of law. It was almost about who they were incarcerating.
It's
So,
funny that you say that because I remember doing some research for the documentary, and I saw a picture that was in the newspaper when they arrested my dad, and there was these two police officers, detectives, with their feet like perched on top of his Rolls Royce, sort of smiling like it was like a prize, that they got or from his arrest. So it was heartbreaking to me, to be honest, to see them celebrating, um, his quote unquote capture as they may have seen it.
yeah,
So
and
yeah, it definitely was a lot more than just wanting to get someone in prison. It was more of wanting to get that quote unquote celebrity.
Right.
yeah. So I mean, and for those who are from Essex County and from Newark, and I'm not going to take guesses at your age. I would imagine that you're all younger than my father, but you probably might have been in your early 20s, mid 20s during the heyday of quote Akbar Prey. So if you're familiar, he was a larger than life figure, not because of his efforts in the underworld, but it also because he was getting involved politically. He was an astute businessman. He had health clinics. He had car dealerships, and he wasn't, by any means less than flashy. He had presence. If you are someone, a prosecutor trying to build your career or trying to move up, as a judge, this a perfect guy, and ultimately when he was convicted, they never found any type of physical evidence in any of his actual properties. It was a matter of presenting the lifestyle that he lived. So ultimately, he got convicted for the Al Capone, right? Tax evasion without tax evasion, and that's how they end up pinning him up. But the tragic thing about
get that kind of sentence either.
That's often overlooked is when you take down a so-called individual and what it does to their family and their community. And for many of my siblings, and I happen to be far removed at this time, I wasn't quite familiar with who my father was until much later in my life, but it really destroyed and uprooted a lot of my siblings, made their lives a living hell for many years, that took them a lot of years to rebound from. And, even within my family, there's like this paradigm, it's, either you have siblings who are quite successful and have used this experience to motivate them through their lived experience, or you have those who weren't able to quite escape that shadow, right, and kind of fell victim to the streets. I had an older brother named Sultan who was, going in a very dark path and lost his life at a young age. You mentioned my brother Hassan, rest in peace to him. He lost his life to an illness. And
you see that smile on my face. Hassan was so fun. Hassan, you love, and he
happens to be my brother, so I
okay, you choose to. But I could just remember we were all young and just but he had presence, and as a young man, I just remember when you're young and everybody's hanging out and everything, but very humble, very humble.
Yes. I mean, I hear great things about Hassan. My sister Talmina, speaks about him often. That was her baby, her brother. She still misses him to this day. So yeah, Hassan was incredible, and he's missed by many still. But you would imagine that, perhaps, he wouldn't have met that faith if my father were still present.
Right. And so with so Isaac is and even it was interesting. And I was looking at the show that when they interviewed 50 Cent, 50, and he was so surprised that somebody was able to give back the time and then get their law degree, and now they're out there defending people who have been charged similarly like he was charged. So with that being said, as he where you at with the case, how close to um going to court, or are you just in the discovery, where you at?
No, I would say so. All right, so to answer that question, it's a long question to answer. So I'll try to answer it as short as possible. We don't know how deep we are in the fight at this point, right?
Okay.
We put in no, for one, we're represented by Isaac Wright Jr. and Peter Goldberger, who is a famed attorney out the Philadelphia area. He's defended people like Meek Mill, Bill Cosby, in his post sentencing and things of that nature. So we got some great legal minds that are fighting for my father's freedom. For many years, we've put in different type of petitions for compassionate release, clemency, and now we're at the point to where it's at the federal judge's level to where they can make a decision on the compassionate release application that was submitted by our attorney, Peter Goldberger. My apologies, Peter. So yeah, at this point, we're at the stage where a decision can be made today,
Okay.
next month, but this is government, right? So this petition was submitted over 3 years ago. And we also attempted to utilize the COVID extension, right? My father being over the age of 70, and many of his contemporaries being released with larger quantities, with every similar type of profile, less goodwill on their prison record, and yet he's still incarcerated. So it's sometimes we're puzzled by why is our father still in this position? Why did he continue to punish our family? Where you see people all the time being released, even bigger names.
Right.
That's not to knock them. I'm happy they won their freedom. Anytime someone's released, I'm genuinely happy. Akira, who's our guy? Was it Tony Baker Jr.? Tony Baker?
Lewis?
Tony Lewis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a very similar story, with, children fighting for their father's freedom. So we appreciate it. We love when people are released. But it's at this point, it's like, why not our father?
Well, what's interesting? 848 is going to be a documentary, and it'll be telling in an interview. That's how it's going to be, interviewing him, telling his story, and others as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So it features others. It gives historical context to how we got to this point, to when they introduced the 848 stature, and how they went about apprehending many of these quote unquote kingpins, and how pretty much that's a creation of the war on drugs. It's such a deep documentary. I do it little justice by trying to explain all the ins and outs of it. They did an incredible job with just mapping out the history, but also telling the story of Wayne Prey, our father, Anthony Stunson, and a few other individuals. And then you have people like Kevin Childs, who served a significant amount of time in prison for being a drug kingpin. He's out, a redeemed and changed man, giving back to society. But he's also past his middle age. He's in his late 50s. My father is much older than him. As a matter of fact, Kevin Childs talks about meeting my father, not in the documentary, but when we had our own conversations, when he was a younger kid. And this is a man who has grandchildren now. So,
Yeah, and that's and you think about the kingpin law, and it talks about, or you hear about those who are incarcerated under that law, but I don't believe we've ever heard stories about the police who were um cooperating with him, if you will. They, who shared a part of they were paid, and but they were never charged, and we never hear that story. We only hear about the person, the um can't even think the general, like they doing the Godfather, the Akbar praise, but there were a lot of police who became very wealthy as a result of your dad and others.
Yeah, this is true, but that's by design. You're not going to hear that. It kind of you know what it is. It's a unique human condition, right? To where you have to almost admit your faults, right? So to let's just say, for instance, if you have a police department who they're going to introduce some reforms. Well, just by saying that I'm introducing a reform is an indictment on past behaviors. It's an admission to the role that you played in that. And for whatever reason, America, we just can't let go. Like American cannot let go. And that's the reason why people like my father are still incarcerated, because they just simply can't let go. They're not going to say, oh yeah, they can easily retroactively address this, but it's apologizing. America's never apologized for slavery. It's a lot of, it's, I have a lot of opinions about this, guys and ladies, but
I got you. We have you.
Kira, what say you? What say you, daughter? Yeah, this is you didn't come on the model. We want to hear you.
Are you sure? If we're not speaking about the whole police involvement, because I don't really have much information about that, but just the injustice of someone being incarcerated for with a life sentence without parole for a nonviolent offense. That's my biggest concern. That's my biggest thing that I advocate against. I'm a social worker by profession. And I told someone recently, I was like, I don't see how I can be out in the world advocating and being a voice for people who are voiceless, and my father's sitting in prison. Right. And they are pretty much just wanting him to die there. So that's sort of what caused my advocacy, because I just felt like if there was any injustice there, I had to be a voice for him. My father's my best friend. Like, I love him to death. So everything that I can do, I'm fighting with documentaries, I'm fighting with petitions, I'm fighting, just raising awareness anywhere that I can, so let people know what's happening. And I don't want him to be forgotten. I don't want any of the prisoners who are still in jail from archaic drug laws to be forgotten. So that's my role.
Now, I didn't know you were a social worker.
I am, yes, sir.
Oh, listen, we need to have with both of you. There's some follow-up conversations we definitely need to have in terms of some spaces and places that are happening locally where your voices and your skill set can be highly valued and impacted. Right. I want there's some other doors that we need to open for you that are very close to you that you may not see. Right. We've got some Newark, the social workers that we have in our community-based violence intervention ecosystem. Remember that language.
Yeah.
That's one of the spaces I want to bring you to.
Okay.
Right? Are changing in a revolutionary way the face of social work. Social work used to,
yes,
primarily in our community,
yeah,
be the soft arm of the state that broke our families up. Right? And it is a traumatic space for a lot of us to heal. Now, with all of the efforts that we're trying to make and putting the public back in public safety and using the credible messenger paradigm for folks who have been have been on the other side of our community's problems, who redeem themselves and are putting themselves back out into the community to try and shift that energy, and it's space that is bringing the violence numbers down, space that is working, right? We've got social workers, and it's Black women, including my own daughter, Black women who are driving that work.
Yes.
Right. And then look at your brother, who's now an elected official.
Yes.
Right. Having this lived experience up on him closely. But, here's a story of transcendence. For all of the oppression that is that is a matter of intent of this system. And let's be, we don't have to pull punches about that, because that's what it is. Right. Some of us, like the two of you, have been able to transcend that without abandoning that. They love when we walk away from our community.
Yes.
They
Yep.
love that. We safe when we do that. But when we actually come back to our community and advocate for our community, then we're doing more than pulling Band-Aids off of wounds. We're saying there's some bigger problems here that y'all need to own up to also.
Exactly. I 100% agree. I've said before, like, you hear politicians, sorry, Jeff, saying that, that it was a mistake, the war on drugs and the sentences that they gave out, they were a mistake and they're sorry. But once you say it was a mistake, okay, it's like, now what do? You can't just say it was a mistake without any actions behind it.
That's right.
Right?
Yes. A true apology is change behavior.
Exactly. So now we're looking for the action. Now that you've admitted that there was a mistake, now that you said that you've done something wrong, now we need to see those words and actions. Now we need to see you help rebuild these families, help put some programs for the children that were left fatherless. It needs to be something more than just, I'm sorry.
Akira,
Go ahead.
there was
and
it sounded we have an attorney, Ray Brown, his wife, I think it's Jeannie Brown. She actually did a lot of programs that, while her husband was the attorney, she did a lot of programs for the incarcerated, whether it was making sure that the children of the incarcerated got during the holidays, that they were not forgotten. Just match their families up so that they can have people support them. Have you have your family done any programs or anything like that where you are working with other families of incarcerated persons?
It's interesting when you say about the holidays, because I was one of those children that got gifts from Angel Tree, is what it's called. And they come around and they give you a gift during Christmas, because my mother and my father were both in prison. So what I've been doing more recently is working with domestic violence, because I'm based in Atlanta. I'm not in New Jersey, so I don't have a lot of the connections that may be available in New Jersey. So here I work with Partnership Against Domestic Violence, and I do yearly programs for the children in the domestic violence shelter, and also I do candlelight dinners and things for the women on Valentine's Day in the shelter. So that's more my realm as what I'm doing here. But I'm actually, there's a young lady who I think it's We Have Us Now, We Got Us Now, is a program that I'll be meeting with her later this week to see what I can do more for the program that she works with for children of incarcerated parents.
There's a young sister who runs our Newark Anti-Violence Coalition now, Cassandra Severe, who's formerly justice impacted, who is now the female face of Meet 'em at the Gates here in Jersey. And I'm encouraging her to take some more steps in terms of her own organizing. So that there are places. There are places out there, and I can run down a list. That's a whole nother conversation. And like I said, I want to check in with y'all at some point afterwards and lay out some other spaces where your voices and your skill set can be very, very appreciated. Right?
Great. Now that's a notable cause. One of the spaces that I work extensively in is the expungement arena, and that's something that kind of just fell in my lap. So in my previous work experience, I used to work as a property manager, and I would notice, a big discrepancy on who would get approved to live, right? And what I would find is that a lot of brothers and sisters would come in, good credit score, very good income, but have some type of minor conviction from 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And because federal laws deal with housing, even with cannabis and marijuana being legal in New Jersey, that was still held over their head. So once cannabis became legal in New Jersey, I had to speak to these property management companies directly and see if they would change their actual policy. It was nothing on the law that would force them to allow people to live there. And it more or less happened because I noticed a young man with a tattoo. I'm not going to get into specifics about it, but I'm from an environment where I know what to look out for, right? So when he sat and talked to me, he came up with somebody who was code switching a bit, and ended up becoming very successful. And he lived on Avon Avenue. Shout out to Shennell. He lived on Avon Avenue, and he was just trying to come into a better environment for his daughter. And so that incident right there, with him being flagged and not being able to move in, I held on to his application. I said, listen, I'm gonna really push for you to get in here. And then the property management company went ahead and changed their policy, giving certain stipulations for those who may have had some type of nonviolent, offense, petty, drug-related things from many years ago. They just have to write an additional letter. And I said, you know what? This wouldn't even have to even be an issue if these people can just simply get it expunged. And even with cannabis being legalized, it wasn't retroactive. You would still have to go about getting it done yourself. You had to be proactive on your end. And the one frustrating thing or an argument, an issue that people have with government is that it's overcomplicated. You have a lot of bureaucracy, right? Yes. Or if you want to get the expungement done, it's going to cost you a few $1,000s. So I partnered up with a couple of MSOs. These are what you call multi-state or multi-site operating cannabis companies that are majority white owned, right? But they are, trying to use that buzzwords like, diversity and equity and inclusion, right? DEI issues. So we pretty much call them, out on it and say, hey, listen, what are you going to do to provide social impact? And there's been one particular company that has answered the bell, named Air Wellness, who has sponsored several free expungement clinics throughout the state. So we're actually doing another one at the JFK Community Center in Rahway, New Jersey on July 15th. It will be a free expungement clinic where people can literally just pre-register. They'll come in. It might take them about 30 minutes. Most of the time, it doesn't even require them to even have any additional paperwork. The process has gotten so easy to the point to where you can just type in your social security number and your record will pull up. And these attorneys who are working for free or being paid by the company, but obviously are serving you for free, can literally give you a clean slate. Whether it's 1 offense or 3 offenses, if it's anything beneath a grade 2 felony, your record could potentially be wiped clean, giving you a second chance at a legacy. And this puts you in a position to where you can get housing you might have never gotten before, or a job you never have gotten before. So you think about it. People with felonies, if they do end up working, they are often forced to take jobs that pay significantly less money. So let's just say the difference between a job with a felony and without a felony is $30,000, $40,000 a year. That's perhaps maybe $2 million over the course of someone's working lifetime. Mm-hmm. But not only that, but that impacts the way your children come up. That impacts the zip code, or if you're able to stay home with them and do homework, versus, making them a latchkey kid. So there's really no way to truly measure how impactful this work is. But my thing is, once you pay your debt to society, and I think about my father re-entering society, I don't want the stigma of him being a felon to be held over his head.
Right.
That's one of the things about the Second Step Act that's also pretty good, is that it wants to address the voting issue, right? One of the issues with felons is that they can't vote. So when you go into the system, you got metal handcuffs, but when you get out, you have paper handcuffs. You got things hanging over your head that's never going to quite make you a first-class citizen ever again. You're in permanent underclass if you made a mistake many times before your brain is even truly developed. You know, most of the time, most of these guys who are sitting in prison right now, they have made mistakes when they were 18, 19, 20 years old.
Or younger. The Jersey will age you up in a heartbeat.
There you go. So again, you know, just like my sister, I think our lived experiences made us dive deeper into what we're doing. And it's something that you can't help yourself. You know, you either you care or you don't care. And even with this fight, we're trying to get my father free. You know, I'll be honest with you, it's difficult to keep people's attention because it's a very we've been given so many unfortunate outcomes. I mean, with denials to fake release dates. So at one point, the BOP literally put a release date of our father online some years ago, and they would said, "Not psych. Actually, that was a mistake."
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. So
they do that.
How that plays with the family.
Now, I wonder. We have Hakeem Green just jumped in, and he's an incredible artist. He's Newark's ambassador to hip hop. He weighs in on everything. He's and just wanted to see. Do you have any questions?
Ed's a lawyer on here too.
No, I'm just actually just listening and learning myself. I think you're doing great work, Councilman. And when I think about government and how to affect change, is people like you doing that real work because of your personal experiences, but using your personal experiences to help others navigate this beast. Is salute to you and your sister for maintaining that fight. And I hope your dad sees freedom. So yeah, just wanted to say salute.
Hakeem, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. I know my sister appreciates that.
Thank you.
Well, and of course, I'm not sure if you are in the Newark area, but everybody on this panel is invited to come to the viewing of the documentary. My sister will be flying in town. I'm not sure where she's crashing at, but
on your couch.
Wow.
What are the dates?
Tuesday the 27th.
Yeah, starting at 6.
New law school at Rutgers, Newark.
Free entry. So we do ask that you register beforehand, but if you get there, no one's going to turn you away. We just want to spread the word, continue to build momentum. Tuesday is going to be a big day for the family. Hopefully, we have some news to report. Not long after that. But yeah, we're looking forward to it for people to be educated on many of these issues. So I mean, in full transparency, we all know Deborah Gregory from the NAACP Newark branch. Shout out to her, phenomenal woman, legendary. The real deal.
I was 14 years old.
Yeah,
she's my teacher at Seton Hall Upper Bound.
Oh, okay. I went to Seton Hall too, by the way.
I did it at Upper Bound High School.
Nice.
So I know since I was 14.
Yeah, I see the Upper Bound kids there. Yeah, and when she watched the documentary, she said, "Wow, you know what? Like, I think we might need to redirect some of our attention, because I mean, you think about it. I mean, how many people do you know whose parents are spending significant time in prison? And people, but it's not like a big population of people that's widely discussed. It's not a huge voting block, so you really don't hear about it that much, honestly. I have very few people I can relate to on this matter outside of my siblings, who have also gone through it. But it's criminal of what's been done all these years, and these practices have been under the radar because you're just who cares? They're animals. They're prisoners. Like why do they? It's easy to forget.
The question I got for you for both of you. As you all know, judges are human beings. We've actually had some folks on the show who your father have impacted while they were incarcerated. Have you all made that aware, made that known to the judge?
Absolutely. So when you are submitting a package, you have these things called supplements, right? And we have pages upon pages upon pages of testimonials, programs that my father implemented, curriculums that were adopted by the Newark public school system, endorsement letters by Kenneth Gibson, Ross Baraka back when he was principal at
high school.
Yeah, back when he was. We have just a ton of Councilman Beasley out of the late Councilman Beasley out of Irvington, and of course individuals who've read his book and was able to change paths and divert a path of crime. There's a great deal of endorsement from previous wardens in this package, right? It's telling stories about how my father prevented prison riots. There's not many people. It's probably a handful of people who have had the impact of that our father has had while incarcerated in preventing violence, from educating and deterring people. And the position of the government in many cases was that they felt that my father's book may have glamorized the drug game, and that's precisely what he wasn't doing. As a matter, the name of the book was called "Death of the Game" or "The Game is Dead," right? And he spoke a language that the population that he needed to reach could understand. You can't Nancy Reagan a 12-year-old boy from Newark, New Jersey. You can't just tell him just say no. He more or less explained that, listen, the game is already determined. You're not any smarter. You're not any slicker. You're not any quicker.
You're not any bigger.
Try anything that hasn't been done before. And honestly, I don't know anybody who's left this unscathed and went and sold drugs and then became this millionaire tycoon owning a whole bunch of properties. Like, at some point, it catches up to you. And my father makes that point like many people can't. And he tells it how it actually is.
We used to say in the streets, everybody takes a fall.
So in this documentary, are some of those people whose lives your father has impacted, are they in this documentary?
So the documentary. I'm not sure where my sister went. If she's still on, she might have to jump off. So the documentary is supposed to be a series of a few parts. So to my understanding, part 2 is supposed to go more into the story of Wayne Akbar Prey. This particular one just features him. So I'm not sure if this speaks in length about his impact, but it kind of goes more so into the nature of his crimes being nonviolent,
and his relationship to
Bill, redemption, and him being more of a benefit being out, and the fact that he's an elderly man, been doing 35 years. It's a taxpayer burden, at the very least, but also it's cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, the reason I say that is because, oftentimes what lawyers will say amongst themselves is, well, we have the story, right? So we know the story. The judge doesn't necessarily know the impact of your father, right? I'll give you a story. I had a young man who was looking at 7 years, but he had a military career, and his public defender was so busy just trying to get the charges reduced for him, and talk about what kind of prisoner he was inside, and what he had done, But at no point did she give the judge the picture of, his military career.
Mhm.
And so when the judge heard me give the military career, he said, whoa, stop the presses. He said, wait a minute. He said, are you telling me that this man is an American hero and that they want to lock him up for 7 years? He said, whoa. He said, we're not going to do that. He says, here's what we're going to do. He said, how long has he been in? And we said, well, he's been in for 3.5 years, Judge. They're looking at prosecutors talking about, a 7-year term. He said, no, we're not going to do it. This boy's an American hero. Granted, he got caught with a weapon he shouldn't have had. He doesn't have any criminal background. Yeah, I understand what the law says. I've got to immediately give him 5 years. But you know what? He's an American hero. He saved people's lives. I get to live the life I live. My children get to live the life they live because he put his life on the line. You know what? Time served. You can go home, son. Just like that.
Wow.
No more debating. No more coming back to court. No more putting up, bail. The judge immediately just said, I make that decision today. You can go home.
I want to bring it back to the land of hip hop.
And by what was happening, he couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Right. And true. I just want to just say that, remember, we only have about 3 minutes left in terms of the wrap-up questions and what we want to ask. I did want to say something at the very end after this segment, but I know that make sure that we're just wrapping things up.
Haqq, do you want to ask the question?
No, wait, before we get to that.
Let me just say this to this.
Okay.
Let me just say this to the brother before we go.
Okay.
What I would say is that all those people, because I was impressed by some of the young brothers who came on the air here and was telling us, the impact of your father. Those real live statements need to be put in front of a judge. That needs to be on a documentary and that kind of stuff. When a judge hears that, because we know the story of your father. Trust me, the judges and prosecutors know that too. What they don't know
in my hand right now, and I have a summary reentry plan for all the programs that my father has been a part of while incarcerated. The outcomes of that, his curriculums that he put together, programs, letters from students from Newark Public Schools, testimony, like these are essays written by students. And this is just what I have that my father literally mailed to me 2 days ago. Certificates of completion of certain programs, completion of the GEDs, and testimonies from wardens. Job readiness and technology skills, take ownership of mistakes, conflict resolution. It's a great deal, a very robust package that I believe we hit every single avenue, including everything that you mentioned, Mr. Riley. That is honestly what we're really hanging this out on. It's how does it benefit society? What has he done? It's not a matter of just being, we just want our father home, but we understand in order to even get them to even invest into this and in their mind, take the gamble. We know it's not a gamble, but take the gamble on and roll the dice on my father. He's still going to be someone who's advocating and working upon release. He can't help himself. This is what he does anyway. He's been doing this since day one. If you are in prison for a year of a life sentence, your head's not really in trying to help people unless it's really in you to help people. Right. And my father has been doing that since he's first gotten on. You can YouTube people like what's my man's name? I know like Glaze Gibbs and all different types of
Right. I know that we run out of time for the segment, and I know our show is officially just at 9. But Zaid, can you?
No, I just wanted to give you this note of hope, and Hakeem, you will appreciate this, right? We just got somebody out of prison. I'm taking this back to the land of hip hop. There's a Tupac Shakur is going through a whole new rediscovery. But nobody talks about his stepfather, Mutulu Shakur.
Well, that's my father's best friend.
All right, that's all right. Yeah. And they said Mutulu would never get out. Jersey, they said Sundiata Coley would never get out, right? But we never gave up, and they never gave up, right? So I want you to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. You got your it's in your hand. You got it right there, right? It's a question. It's not, as far as I'm concerned, it's a matter of when, right?
Yeah, we feel that way too. We're cautiously optimistic about our outcome. We feel better than we ever felt before. We think there's new sentencing guidelines that are going into effect soon, that we ask for consideration of, and there's much more political momentum than ever before. But I think it's honestly divine intervention at this point as well. I think God's going to reward us for our relentless work. And it's not just me and my sister. I mean, there's just a ton of other. I won't say a ton, but there's a core group of dedicated individuals who have been fighting day in and day out. Millie Harris, our brother Suleiman, Allison, and Lamont, and myself, Akira, right, and other siblings, Majid. It's a lot. I mean, it's a core group of us who've been fighting.
And as we have you, and as we close out,
hey, there's Akira.
Hey,
and as we close out, and both of you, who is Hip Hop Show? Who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? And we're also going to have you back again. We're going to
we definitely going to do that.
Talk about where this is going. So we definitely want to get updates on what's going on. So who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Okay, my favorite group is Dipset. See,
of course.
So Cameron, Jim Jones, Joel Santana. That's the era I grew up in. That was my heyday. Of course, Big Jay-Z and Nas. As far as new school or more current, Drake. I know he's not really Snoop Dogg, and I know he's not really considered to be a hip hop artist, but I'm a huge fan of Pharrell. Lastly, for as far as a new school, and it broke my heart that he had to transition early, but Pop Smoke was he's incredible. So I don't listen to hip hop that often because what I'm saying is that with the drill and things like that, it's a negative vibration. But when I go into the gym, I go into a super Compton Pyru type of mode, and I tap into a different space, right?
Into the ring like that.
And the Pop Smoke and the old school DMX, it gives you that energy to deadlift 300 pounds. And
all right, well that's great. So Akira, how about you? Who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual?
So my favorite, and sometimes she's not considered hip hop, but Lauryn Hill. People want to.
She's hip hop.
Yeah, she is.
To me, of course she is. But people, no, she sings. So, but no, definitely Lauryn Hill.
You see who the classy one is.
All right, so hip hop.
Hip
hop is not what you do; it's how you do it.
So we listen to Lil Baby, The Baby, even but of course in Atlanta we got to say Outkast all day.
Oh yeah.
T.I.
You keeping it classy?
Yep.
T.I.'s cool. Mike album that I
heard that's good. I heard it's a great album.
So I got to hear about that.
I heard it's a great album.
Yeah.
So,
I love Future too, by the way.
All right, that's all right. It's time to go. It's enough. I knew we should have ended this earlier. All right.
This is where we are. This is the issues that we're having.
Right. So
y'all share this on Facebook and YouTube, to help you just galvanize support for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Jonathan, go ahead and take us home.
All right. So thank you so much for being here. We're gonna have to have you back. Thank you, Hakeem, for jumping in, man. I'm trying to get you to talk more, man. Because I know that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just you have to listen.
Right.
This was a listening episode for me. Gotta learn.
All right, that sounds good, man. You are wise. You are wise. So I appreciate you, and we'll have you back. We'll have and we'll have you back out to give us updates on what's going on and any help you need.
Our goal is to have our father on.
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Absolutely.
So, and we need to develop some traffic towards his writing to him at the prison.
Zion, you're being like
right?
Donna.
That matters.
Like Donna, right? You're doing the Donna thing. Donna's silent. Donna's like, you ain't getting me this time. You ain't getting me this time. And Zion just jumping in.
I got another question, but I'm trying to be courteous before I ask my question.
Okay, well, we're trying to.
No, go ahead. I'm only playing.
Okay, cool.
But Kira, have safe travels.
Too. I know what you do. We're like, and next week, and you're like, wait. My name is Donna. You must not realize I'm about to ask a whole new brand. All right, so no, thank you, and we'll get you back on, and we will hopefully we'll have your father on. All right. So thank you all the guests that we had on tonight. Thank you to the disciples, and we're praying for everyone's health, right? And
praying for Pastor Brian Ali's health for real. Right. Happy birthday, Asia Norton! Birthday today.
Yes, happy birthday to our former co-host, right? Who's welcome anytime to do it again. We're trying to get her back, so happy birthday, and to Shennell McCloud. Thank you for coming on for Project Ready. Looking forward to having her back on as well. So thank you.
And the Karen Councilman, Principal Caffelli said he jumped on late, but he did just share the information. He reposted so people can know what's going on.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we see you guys on Tuesday.
Oh, I'll definitely be there.
Appreciate the invite. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah,
thank you. Here's safe travels.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for support and getting the word out about my dad's case. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Until next